Good evening. We'll call to order the June 4th, 2019 City Council. The clerk will call the roll and record the attendance.
Anderson Burgos,
Here.
Bartley,
Here.
Bresnahan, Leahy,
Present.
LeBron Martinez,
Here.
Lisi, McGee, McGivern,
Here.
Murphy,
Here.
Sullivan, Tallman,
Here.
Bacon, Valentine.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
in the City of Holyoke.
And the City Council.
In our schools.
And our phone.
First on the agenda is public comment. There are 23 people signed up. As the rules require, it's 10 people, so we need a suspension of the rules.
Make a motion to suspend the rules.
Motion is to
Second.
suspend the rules to allow.
The comments
1
to
minute.
1 minute.
So the request is to suspend the rules, allow all 23 parties to speak, of which it'll be 1 minute time. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? With that, I do have the stopwatch. What I will do is when you come to speak, after you give your name and your address, then I'll start the clock. At 40 seconds, I will give you a wave. At 1 minute, the time will be up. We're going to have to enforce it due to the amount of people. Any questions from anybody? All right, with that, first on the list is Mayor Morris from 11 Linden Street.
Good evening, councilors, and I want to thank all of the members of the public who were here tonight. I will be brief, as I've been before this body many times before, encouraging that the council move the question forward. This has been a spirited debate and conversation over the last 18 months. And this body and the administration have been working together on new middle schools in the city for the last 3 years. And the fundamental question for me is, are Holyoke kids worth this investment? Do Holyoke kids deserve the same type of facilities and access to the same type of education that kids get in wealthier suburbs here in Western Massachusetts? We haven't had a new school constructed in Holyoke in the last 30 years. And we're in the position we're in today because of the progress we've made over the last several years. I've heard some fear tactics as to the city, but it is because of our strong financial position today that we're even getting the funding by the MSBA to qualify for that. This was a tough process with MSBA. It's unprecedented that we have 2 schools being approved simultaneously at the same time. And as we now, for the first time in decades, have a waiting list for our public school programs at the elementary school level, the families and parents that I speak to are worried
that is a
about
minute.
going elsewhere for middle school. So again, I think this is a great investment, not just for the schools, but for the entire city, and I look forward to seeing this done tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Hannah Kennedy of 85 Eastern Promenade.
Hello, I'm Hannah Kennedy, 85 Eastern Promenade. I am the mother of 3 young boys, 2 of which are in Holyoke Public Schools right now. And as a mom, I urge all of you to allow us citizens the opportunity to vote. We desperately need these new middle schools, and I think that it'll be beneficial for Holyoke to build these schools, because you'll be able to draw in many more new families like ours who are looking for a great place to educate our children and a great community to raise them in.
Thank you. Next is Ian Dure of 120 Morgan Street.
My friend Ian was kind enough to let me switch because my baby is getting close to her nap time. So I'm number 14 or 15, Jennifer Giolino, 256 Pine Street. I'm going to speak to you as a mother, recent mother, and as a teacher. I've been a teacher in the public schools for 13 years. I'm a specials teacher. I'm a violin teacher, and I can explain, more than happy to explain, how difficult it is to schedule a robust and amazing group of educational opportunities when we have very limited space and not enough staff to be in those spaces, or actually not enough staff to be able to have every middle schooler get a music class or a gym class every week. It's an incredible challenge, I've been in hallways, I've been in locker rooms that were seeping sludge, and I've also been on stages that are over 100 degrees in the summer.
40?
Thank you so much, and please let us vote. I'm a resident. I'd love to vote for this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. Does Ian want to come back?
Ian Duryea, 120 Morgan Street. I just wanted to talk a little bit about fiscal responsibility because we own a home, we have 2 kids, and that's something that means a lot to me. But fiscal responsibility, sometimes it means not paying for things, sometimes it also means choosing what we're going to pay for and deciding what we're responsible for paying for and how we're going to do that. And I think that this situation falls into that, and I just hope everyone gives the citizens the right to vote on this, the opportunity to vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. 650 Boulay Street, Andrew Arians.
Good evening. My name is Andy Ahrens. I own SolarEdge Inc. over on Bolio Street. I've heard a lot about this issue, mainly around the business taxes of the 2%. And we're one of those businesses, those special businesses in town that pay an extra 3% on top of the already realistically high taxes in Holyoke. And I'm here to say that we are more than in favor of these schools coming in. What costs us much more than 2% tax is schools that don't function, employees that aren't educated, an employee at work that is stressed about their kids at school. And we understand from the business perspective, I speak on behalf of just my business, we understand the impact that these schools can have and that the foundation of a healthy economic city and town is the schools. That's where it starts. And on the personal level, I live in Boston now. We're relocating to Western Mass as soon as we get this business up and running, which is hopefully in the next 6 months. There are beautiful homes in Holyoke that are available to buy. But when I go on Zillow and Redfin, they give school scores. And I can't tell my wife that we can send our kids to these schools. Realistically, we look, and we are looking. But when the school scores pop up at 1 and 2, and towns in the surrounding area are popping up at 8 and 9, it's a tough sell. And we want to be part of this community. We've shown up, and we will continue to show up in support of this. And we urge you to put it to an intelligent community to hear what they have to say about their vote. Thanks.
Linda Pratt, 42 Belvedere.
Good evening, councilors. I'm here before you again. I know that some members of the community have expressed their opposition to the proposal to build these 2 new middle schools, and they've made that clear to you. If you put this issue on the ballot, then those who are registered voters can express their opinion in the voting booth. Those of us who support these schools and this proposal want to be able to express our opinion in the voting booth as well. We need 9 or more of you to allow the voters to decide. So please, put this important issue before the voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Aloysia, 147 Sycamore Street.
Hi, I'm Deborah at 147 Sycamore Street. So there's one thing that really bothered me when I read through the report, when I first read about this. The first part was that in 2018, there was already a finalized plan. And if we wanted to get this on the ballot immediately and we were concerned about escalation, then we should have been talking about getting this on the ballot in 2018. I think there are a number of times when we had an opportunity to have a non-binding question on the ballot well before we got to this point where it was so decisive. You had to divide between who wanted it and who didn't want the schools. I think all of us agree that we need some improvements to the schools. Obviously, there's a lot of room for improvement, but there's some questions about designs. Are 4 levels really realistic for somebody with a disability who's a teacher? Did we take that into consideration with all of the designs? And did we consider all points of view? And my thought process is we didn't.
Next is 26 Belvedere, Miguel, is it Arch?
Arce.
Arch. I knew it when I saw you step up. Sorry. After you.
Good evening, counselors. I'm going to bring you 3 ideas. My first idea is really quite a radical idea, and it's called democracy. We're asking you tonight to allow this, our educated community, to make a critical decision on an important thing that's impacting all of our children. Citizen participation, citizen involvement, and citizen control are exactly why you're here. I hope that you will promote it. The second idea I have is what problems we have in Holyoke. They're stark and real. I won't elaborate. We all know it, and I only have 15 seconds left. My last point is the goal. The goal is to promote quality education. I think we have a real opportunity here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One thing I do have to ask, the signs have to go down. They can't be in the chamber. That is the rule. Next is, looks like Jens Mickelson or Michelson?
Good evening, counselors. I've been reading a lot of the things that the counselors had to say. Some of them were published on Facebook. And there were a lot of really good concerns and alternatives that were sought by a lot of members of this body. So I applaud you on that, and thank you for looking for other solutions. But knowing that this is the only way to do this right now, I would ask that you look and you think about what your vision of Holyoke would be in 15 years. If you love this city, what do you want from this city in 15 years? And where does this fall on that? Where does the school system fall on that? I think it's pretty high on mine. This gentleman said that he was looking to maybe not live in Holyoke because of the ratings that the school got. And I had the same boat about 10 years ago when I moved to Holyoke. And now I own a house in Holyoke, and I'm happy that I do. So really what I ask of you tonight is that you put this before the people, because it shouldn't be whether or not we're going to do this, it's how we're going to do it together, because the options you've come up with are wonderful, and everybody in this room has a great idea. They're just waiting to share it. Thank you.
Abigail of 322 Pine Street. In the hallway? Yep.
Way in the back there.
No problem.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So when I thought about what I might say when I had the opportunity to be heard, I thought about an article I came across about a young woman who had mentioned that her ethnicity was being from India, but she wasn't born there, her parents were. And she had said that she really never felt Indian, but she also never really felt American, but what she did feel was like a New Yorker. So that resonates with me because of my background. So my parents are from Puerto Rico. I was born here, and sometimes I felt like I really didn't belong in either group, but where I know I belong is Holyoke. So with that being said, you have an opportunity here to unite what appears to be a divisive community. And I will have faith that you will make the right decision and let the people of the community decide what's best. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul from 78 Bemis Road.
Hi, my name is Raul Gutierrez, and I live in.
Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Fine.
I apologize.
And 78 Bemis Road. As a father, as an educator, I think that we shouldn't politicize education, first of all. Second of all, I think that this decision is very important, that it should be decided by the people and not just some people in a room somewhere. So let the people vote. And then whatever the people decide, we can live with that. Thank you.
Thanks. Ed Case. Ed's coming. Hey Ed, how are you?
Good evening. How are you? Good evening, counselors. So I'm a Holyoke resident. I'm a taxpayer, and I've been volunteering about 20, 25 hours a week because I can see that we can make a difference in the kids' lives. You know, 8 years ago when we started this work, we seen the graduation rate was at 48%, the high school graduation rate. We've seen it go up to 72%. I don't think a lot of citizens in Holyoke know that the social emotional issues that our youth face, you know, many of our youth growing up in poverty and growing up layers and layers and layers of trauma. So I think that a lot of the work that has been done over the last 8 years, particularly with the school system, and all the people in Holyoke are trying to rally together to volunteer their time to really invest in kids that really don't have a shot. So I think we're asking you tonight, City Council, to please give the citizens of Holyoke an opportunity to vote on this on the ballot. The other thing I want to say is
40, just let you know, 40.
The kids in Holyoke, the families in Holyoke, they are worth investing into. Billions of dollars on the back end, a little on the front end, could really save us billions on the back end. So I'm just asking you guys to give us an opportunity to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mildred Lefebvre.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Mildred Lefebvre, and it's 118 St. Colby Drive, Ward 1 School Committee and Vice Chair of the Holyoke School Committee. So talking about the middle school project, it's sad to say that it has brought a lot of ugliness in our own city, a lot of divide, okay? And when I hear about renters and I hear about people who live in housing, their votes don't matter. My question is to you, when do our votes matter? Because I'm a renter. Is it only when we're good to put people into certain positions? Is that when our votes are good? So at the end of the day, the schools has to do with our kids as well. And kids who are, families who are renters, people who live in the city, people who do live in housing.
40, just let you know, 40.
It's their children as well. And we have a right to vote to better our community. And it's part of the educational plan. Thank you.
68 Nonotuck. Elena, am I saying that right? Bob?
Hi, it's Ilana.
Ilana, sorry.
Hi, I'd just like to sort of bring up the topic of change and the challenges in the name of change and what's possible. I think one of the reasons I actually moved to Holyoke 3 years ago is because I have an opportunity to see through challenge to solutions, and that the debt exclusion proposal and the work behind it, the many years and many, many hours of work put into this proposal deserve the time that the people of Holyoke should be able to vote. And change is hard. We're all noticing things around us changing that we don't necessarily like, but we have to go with it, and we either go screaming, kicking, fighting into the future, or we work together, and change is possible, and people's opinions can be heard. Just want to say, we the people, let us decide. Thank you.
76 Maple Street, Margaret Brown.
Hello, I'm Margaret Brown. I have grown up in the city and have attended schools. I have taught here and in 3 other states, Alaska, New Mexico, and California. I have voted for school bond issues, and most of them came in where the states were paying 90% or more of the cost. I'm concerned that we're paying over 50, and I consider that since this was a mandate that came from the state, that it's time that we really think about what our role should be. But I also think that 4 stories, having 2 new tenements in Holyoke may not be the best solution, and I stepped away recently from a teaching position where I was working on the 2nd floor, and I was going up and down stairs at least 10 times a day, and that was just 2 floors. 4 floors is something else. So I just wanted to say, I think education is wonderful. I'd love to vote for it, but I'd like to see some better approach monetarily.
Thank you. Next is Dennis Burks, 18 West Glen.
Good evening, everyone. So we're at a turning point, and the point is now where I think most of the people in our community understand that we need new schools, especially middle schools, as we look to improve middle school education in the city. The problem is, one of the problems is how we're going to fund it. And there are a group of people who do not want their taxes raised at all for whatever reason, and it's understandable. But then there's a large number of people in this community who are ready to invest in our children's future. We're ready to invest in building a better Holyoke, and we're ready to invest in our children's education. So I'm here to ask you to please put this on the ballot so that the community can have their say. Thank you.
Elaine Florio.
Good evening, Helene Florio, 31 Wellesley Road, and I'm president of the Holyoke Taxpayers Association. I received some information and figures today from a city department head that caused me great concern. That currently, of the noted bonded indebtedness of the city, we have $113,253,751 still owed, and that bonded indebtedness does not include anything that the City Council has approved since the 1st of January, which would include things like the fire department. I'm not going to go any further with that. These are all expenses off of the taxpayer, whether it's our regular taxes or debt exclusion override.
40, just to give you a heads up, 40.
The Holyoke taxpayers right now just cannot afford an increase of this extent. And while I'm at the microphone, I want to just compliment strongly the changes that have gone on and the successes that have been through the vision of Dr. Shrike, the increased graduation rates from 48% to 72% in our old
1 minute.
falling down buildings. Thank you.
Next is Jay Candelario, 1109 Dwight Street.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Candelario. I'm a resident and a business owner of the city. I own Jay's Bed and Breakfast, so I'm involved in several different taxes. I know that I grew up, part of my childhood was growing up here in Holyoke, and grew up and graduated from Holyoke High School. So I know that investing in the future of the kids, a lot of you have kids in school or have grandkids in school, and I know that you want them to have the best growing up education here in Holyoke. And I think the more education, better buildings and better facilities for kids provides for them a better future. And also they can see from not only you guys that have been in the city council that went to the schools and have gone to better professions because you went to the schools. At the same time, this allows other kids that may not have other possibilities to have a better schools, classes, smaller classes, more teachers, better different areas that they can study, more different languages, so that they can better be educated within our system. So I urge you to please allow this to go through so that, again, give the investment to the kids in the future of our city with the growth that we have in our city and a lot of people that are willing to come back into our city. Hey, open the doors and open up your minds for this thing to happen.
Next is Kevin Jourdain, 18 Raymond Ave.
Couple of points. First, Kevin Jourdain, 18 Raymond Avenue, citizen of Holyoke. First thing I'd like to just say is we all know it's not the buildings that are the problems that we have in the schools. If that were the truth, then the Catholic schools and the charter school in Holyoke would have the worst performance possible because their facilities are far inferior currently than what is here. It should be noted that the school committee itself 10 years ago ended the middle schools, said that we shouldn't have middle schools, and that's why we closed Lynch. It should be noted that nowhere do we hear about what is going to happen to Lawrence School. Nowhere is that even mentioned. I suppose that another wrecking ball will go that direction. Bottom line is, you can't afford this, even if you wanted. You can hear all the pie-in-the-sky speeches that we have. You're massively in debt. You have a massive structural deficit. You couldn't possibly afford this. With interest, it's $100 million. $100 million. And as far as the democracy argument goes, the Holyoke Mall is going to pay 15% of the bill. They have no vote, okay? And we have the Housing Authority that's paying a pilot, which I hope you're going to adjust upwardly, because they're going to get hundreds of votes, and they don't pay a dollar, okay? So this isn't democracy of the taxpayers. Let's make sure we got that crystal clear.
Kevin, 1 minute.
1 minute. So the point I'll just say in conclusion is, vote the financial stewardship of this community. This is a ridiculous proposal. This could not possibly be afforded. Let's go back to the drawing board, fight for the 80%. Let's make some renovations and some improvements. So, Mr. President, notice it's all time when I'm talking, okay? I listen to the mayor and everybody else go over.
Kevin.
So, in conclusion,
Mr. President.
Mr. President,
time is up.
thank you. The taxpayers hopefully will be heard on November.
Next is 19 Yale Street. Jamie?
I'll pass until tomorrow's meeting at 6.
Bill Rogalski, 71 Appermont Hill.
It's just about, how many about you? I don't know. I thought it was next week.
Thank you. Order. Hey. Stop. Bill, you have the mic.
Mr. President. First of all, I just want to say that it's not an issue about education because to a person in this room, everybody values education. It's how we're trying to fund this project is really the issue. All I would ask is that the City of Holyoke be prepared to make tough financial decisions that the residents and businesses make on a daily basis. We need a long-term plan going forward. If it's not today, it's going to be another day. We're all back in this chamber talking about funding another issue. And if we have no better plan than to raise taxes and push the tax burden back on the existing tax base, that is an unsustainable business model and just will not work. Again, I think we all here value education. Thank you.
Vera Cologne, 70 Lawler Street.
I am Dr. Yadilet Rivera Colon. I say doctor not because I want my voice to be heard or to show my title at you, but because there's not that many people who look like me who become doctors. The issue with that is access to education and quality of education. I believe that you, as the makers of law, makers of history, have an opportunity, a historic opportunity for Holyoke to actually show the kids of Holyoke that they matter and that they're worth it. Because right now, some of those kids look at those diagrams of what the schools look like and they think that's not for us. They'll never do that for us. So please, I urge you to really let us vote, to really show our kids that we care. Thank you.
Mark Lubold, Norwood Terrace.
Good evening. My name is Mark Lubold, 111 Norwood Terrace here in Holyoke. I also am the general manager of a business here in Holyoke, and I go through all those trials and tribulations that the mall goes through on a smaller scale. And I'm willing to put it on the ballot and let the people speak, because that is America. Okay, to say otherwise is just terrible. A report came out in 2016. This is not new. I don't know where all this, oh my God, we got to push this through all of a sudden. This is not new. That 2016 report said 9 of our 9 schools aren't appropriate for middle school education. And 4 of those 9 rate an F in terms of their condition. We're putting kids in failing schools. The infrastructure needs...
Mark, 40.
Yep, the infrastructure needs updating. We can take care of that. We can take those 4 schools offline, get $4.5 million back, and $1 million of those dollars are going to go back to paying the bonds. So what you're hearing out there in terms of tax dollars, that's the worst case scenario. It's already gone down by about 20%. Thank you.
Last speaker is David Yass of Sydney Ave, 20 Sydney Ave.
Well, good evening, everyone, and happy birthday, Mr. President.
Thank you. I thought you were all here for my birthday. I really did. I was very shocked by it. I know it's a serious
I'm
issue.
surprised.
I know it is. Hold on.
1 second left.
All right, well, thankfully, I got most
Thank
of my
you.
thoughts printed in this
We'll have
wonderful
you
news. I got most of my thoughts, probably better expressed in this wonderful newspaper, which I share with all of you by email. I guess just to try to say a few things briefly. The question itself is very misleading. It's not voting yes or no on if we want a middle school, it's on a particular form of funding. That's what people are actually voting on. They're not voting yes or no on a middle school. And if it should go through, I hope it's not just a matter of declaring victory, saying we've got the school, we still got to figure out how to fund those, not only those 6 hours that the kids are in school, but the every 18 hours, what kind of impact the funding on this might have on that, housing affordability and so on. So I hope we'll look at the bigger picture of how this is going to affect our community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilor Lisi.
Thank you. Under suspension of the rules, I'd like to see if we could allow anyone else that's here who would like to speak but didn't have a chance to sign up.
Did anyone miss, or under suspension of rules, to allow others to speak? If there are, so there are people, so all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Please, since I don't have you on the list, state your name and your address. And once again, we're going to stick to the 1 minute. I'll give you the heads up on the 40, and we'll go from there.
My name's Kathy Anderson, 237 Lakes Drive, Holyoke, Massachusetts. The City Council is elected as leaders. You've chosen to be elected as leaders. As leaders, you're in charge of 2 of the most important things in this community: the people and the assets, which are the buildings and the land. You are stewards of these buildings and of what happens to the people. So the vote tonight is to ask about schools for the future of our children. We have not invested in these schools in a long time. I know. I live with a guy that helps fix them. And he has had struggles with a lot of the issues with the big elements of these buildings. As stewards of these properties, it's your job to help figure out how to make this happen, not to say no, but to figure out how. Don't draw a line in the sand.
1 minute.
Thank you. I would like as much time as Kevin Jourdain.
You're actually right there. Next.
Hello, I'm Scott D. Fleece. I live at 60 Cleveland. I think the city has been underinvested in terms of the schools for a long time, and clearly it's an important issue. And I think absolutely there's no question that this has to come to a vote. I don't know how a city operates in that way where you don't give people a choice. I do still have reservations around the sustainability of the tax base. I'm particularly concerned about the mall. I'm particularly concerned about property values, especially in certain neighborhoods that I think are in question. So I think I like to see, as this campaign goes forward and people arguing about this, a bit finer point on the sustainability of some of those revenue streams. And I think if we can all be convinced that those revenue streams are sustainable, then it's something that really should be considered. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Myers-Zimbler. I live at 160 Suffolk Street. And I think there's a lot of strong opinions on both sides of the debate. I don't think tonight is about getting into the details of the debate. I think tonight is about saying we need to put this to a vote. We need to let the residents of Holyoke really decide. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Good evening, and my name is Devin Shea, and I live at 131 Norwood Terrace. I'm a member of the Holyoke School Committee, and I had the honor to serve as the chair of the School Building Committee. And I think one thing that wasn't maybe talked about a lot tonight, we talked about putting on the ballot for democracy, we talked about the funding issues, but it's also the major weight of the Building Committee was to discuss the educational plan and how the educational plan that was put together would be the best for our students of Holyoke. And I think it was noted about graduation rates going up, but we also need to work as a community to close the skills gap, to make sure students are college and career ready. And we don't have facilities that are able to do that. We don't have science programs for K through 8th graders that are going to prepare them to go to some of the best schools in the nation, work for some of the best employers. And this is what this will do. This is in line with the turnaround plan. It was close to 15 years ago that school committee decided to end middle schools, but it was never the right choice. And that's what we're trying to fix and make appropriate education for our students. So thank you all. I know this is a hard decision for everyone, and I really do appreciate the many months of meetings that we had to talk about this.
Next.
Short people's turn. My name is Mary Burks, and I live at 63 Taylor Street in Holyoke. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments about things that have happened over the last few months. One, I think that I've heard people talk about what needs to happen in the state legislature, and I think I wanted to point out that Aaron Vega filed the Promise Act, which would bring about revision in the Chapter 70 reimbursement. Senator Humison filed a budget amendment that would get the incentive points that people have been talking about. The MSBA is funding us to the fullest capacity it can at 80% of eligible costs. And I guess I just sort of want to say that it's time that this city step up and help itself. We're getting a lot of help from elsewhere, and it's time that we do it for ourselves. Thanks.
Rosanna Lopez, 253 Sargent Street. I have a son who is 9 years old, and because of the way the Holyoke schools are structured, he cannot come to these schools. Like, his health cannot take the air quality that is here. So I drive every day to East Hampton. I would like to buy in Holyoke. I would like him to go to school in Holyoke, but him being in school in Holyoke will affect him to the point where he would get lung failure. So I think it's bigger than just money, because at some point, it has to be done. At some point, we have to renew these schools. The world is innovating. We need to innovate our youth. So either we're going to keep these kids in this bubble and they're going to be like children of the corn, or we need to empower them and educate them and give them the resources so we can keep up with the rest of the world. Thank you.
Sandy Ward, 56 Nonotuck Street. I urge you to bring this to the vote of the public as soon as possible. I was urging that it be in April and June, and I now would say September. I think there's some ambiguity that you have a choice of between September and November. I'm very concerned about the figures of how the cost may jump if we delay it to the November. So keep the cost low and go with a September vote, but let's vote. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Laura Ramos, and I'm at 20 O'Connor Avenue, and I urge you to put this for a vote. My husband is a veteran, and we love Holyoke and appreciate the opportunity to vote, democracy, to have a voice. We can debate, and we can learn more about the issues, and we can get reports from the experts that tell us if these buildings are falling apart or not, and what is needed. But we need to be able to vote on this. We need to be able to have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rosalie Tinsley Williams, Ward 2 School Committee. I'm also a mentor for the Young Marines in Holyoke, School Committee Ward 2, and I'm also, came to Holyoke in 1975. My baby was 5 and my oldest son was 7. They're 49 now and 51. They started out at Sullivan School. They graduated from Dean Technical High School. I have 6 years of military time. Holyoke is my city. And you know my motto, if you mess with kids, you mess with me. And so what I would love to do is you guys give us a chance to vote. Please put it on the ballot and give us a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll go next. My name's Erin Fontaine Brunel. Privileged enough to represent the city at large as a school committee member. And, you know, I think the thing that saddens me most about this debate is just it seems to be like us versus them. Like, when did Holyoke as a community become so divisive? You know, so many people choose to live here because we're a community. So I just encourage those of us who forget the plight of what the Irish folks went through when they moved here, the racism, the classism, just remember that. It's not about our kids versus their kids. It's not about uptown versus downtown. You know, in 91, when the citizens of Holyoke voted extra money for police, extra money for fire, extra money for senior services, extra money for taxes, no extra money for education, okay? I was a student in the Holyoke Public Schools. I was one of 4 kids in a single mother household who couldn't afford the options of Blessed Sacrament or Mater Della Rosa or any of the other luxuries that some of us get to afford today. So just keep that in mind, right? Like, we always say no. Now's the time to say yes. Whether you choose to vote no in the ballot box is your prerogative, but the citizens as a whole in this city deserve the right to vote on this. So pass it along, let us vote, let us work hard to get this done, and fight for what's right. Vote. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi. I know you're tired of hearing from me.
No,
but
no. Name and address, please.
I'm Jacqueline Velez. I just wanted to say that I recently asked the mayor and a panel about the cost of the schools and if there were other options instead of just taxing homeowners and businesses. And I found out that the tax is not going to, wouldn't be implemented for 3 years. I think that there's enough brain power in the room to figure out what other creative ways we can think of paying for the schools and just get it to the ballot. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Anyone in the hall? Make an announcement in the hall, case?
Hi, I just had to ask.
Name and address, please.
My name is Charmaine. I live at 33 J. Gerard Way.
Thank you.
My son goes to McMahon School, and I have a daughter who goes to a Holyoke school as well. We just had to ask the school for an AC. An AC. So please give us the right to ask. To vote, because something for an AC, we want a chance. I would like a chance to speak on stuff. So something as simple as an AC, and I just don't really understand when I may not have a lot of your knowledge. I went to Holyoke schools. A lot of my peers are behind me.
40 seconds.
So I just ask for us to be able to vote. Thank you.
Is there anyone?
Stephanie Garcia, 2 Dunn Avenue. My father also is in 76 Northeast Street. I just wanted to follow up what the mom said, because I heard little sounds in the back of me and people thinking that an AC is not a luxury. You sit in a room that doesn't open windows, that doesn't have windows that open in the summer, and you try to learn in those environments. And you have kids with asthma and breathing issues, and you try to put them in a classroom that has no good air quality. So I just wanted to follow up on the mom. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, if there's no further speakers.
Mr. President, I'd make a motion that we skip to items 18B and 18C.
Second.
Second.
Motion is suspend the rules, take up.
But first, before we do that, can we formally acknowledge your birthday, and happy birthday, Todd.
Happy birthday to you.
I'm 21 today.
Times 3.
Oh, it's a tough go. All right, so 18 and C, correct?
Yes, sir.
So a motion to suspend the rules, take up 18B and C. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 18B, the Committee on Charter and Rules. This was the ballot question, the original one filed for April 30th, 2019, with the sample ballot question that was given leave to withdraw. 18C was the newest version that was amended in committee.
18C is
The one
Well,
school
actually,
school option.
One school.
So 18C
Was it one school?
Is the one school.
was the one school, so that one had to be given leave to withdraw. Well, there's only one signature on this one. Counselor Murphy, Counselor Bacon?
Yeah,
So it stays in committee.
So, all right, so it doesn't come out of committee, it's only got one signature. So 18B was to be given leave to withdraw. There is another one, 18A.
Correct.
So do you want to just do 18B? It's given leave to withdraw. It's the old ballot question.
Second.
So 18B is given leave to withdraw. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 18C will stay in committee because it doesn't have the required signatures.
Can we make a motion to take it out of committee with a majority of this body?
Second.
You can.
I make that motion, please?
Motion is to pull item 18C from committee. The clerk will call the roll.
How many
We
votes are
vote-
required
or
for
Actually,
that?
we just do a voice roll, so I'll do it that way.
No, you need 9 to pull it out of committee.
You could ask for a show of hands afterwards.
Fine.
So move from committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
I'm in doubt, so raise your hands in order to, if you're in favor of pulling 18C from committee. So 9. So it's pulled from committee. 18C
Motion to give leave to withdraw.
Second.
Second.
is to give leave to withdraw. This one, for those who are in the audience or at home, this one is the one that was filed to have one school at the Hampshire, Cabot, Elm Street area.
Motion to reconsider.
That was given leave to withdraw. Motion is to reconsider.
Second.
There's a second.
But we haven't taken final action to reconsider.
So, no, the motion was to give leave to withdraw.
Where's
It
the
was
president?
seconded. I was telling the people what we were talking about.
Yeah. We need to vote on that motion before we
Well, the
can
motion was to
reconsider it.
reconsider pulling it from committee. There was a second, of which, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No.
It fails. So back to the original, which is, the motion is to give leave to withdraw. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Show of hands.
There's in doubt. Show of hands to give leave to withdraw. So that one is to give leave to withdraw. Now we're back to, is there any other suspension of rules?
Mr. President, I'd like to suspend the rules and take up the special permit for Buddha.
No.
No.
No. No second.
Whoa, order, please, order. There was a motion that we take up out of suspension a license for Buddha Brothers There was no second,
I'll second that.
All right. So that is,
Somebody asked me to do that at the beginning of the meeting.
let's find it on the agenda.
I think it was taken tonight, yeah.
That's what I'm looking
It
for.
was just on tonight. Meant to take it out of the jacket, I think.
What? 13I. So the motion is to go out of order to 13I. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
All those opposed?
No.
Chairs in doubt. Motion is to go out of order. Show of hands. 3, so it fails for that, so it'll stay. Is there another?
Motion to take 18A, please.
Motion is to
Second.
suspend the rules, take up 18A. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes will have it. 18A, the Committee on Charter and Rules was referred in order to approve the debt exclusion ballot question. Having considered the same, this was amended. The original filing was for September 24th, 2019. It was amended in committee to go to November 5th, 2019. Recommended that be referred to the full council without a recommendation.
Motion to amend the language that came out of committee
Motion is to amend.
To what?
to go back to the September 24th date.
Second.
Motion is to suspend, amend November 5th and go back to the original date of September 24th. That was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Show of hands if you're in favor of the amendment. So you need 7. You got 7. So now it's back on for the new way it's listed is that there be a ballot question for September 24th, 2019, with regards to the new schools at the locations of Cabot, Chestnut, Hampshire, Elm Street, as well as the Peck Middle School. And then there is the sample ballot question that was approved by legal under discussion. This is coming from Charter and Rules, so I'll turn it over to the chair.
Okay, first of all, this has certainly not been an easy issue in many ways, and but let me make comment first of all about the amendment and make sure that people understand what that would mean. First of all, and I've heard people tell me, oh, we're going to get more people. The typical, when we get a preliminary election, and correct me, City Clerk McGee, if I'm wrong, but that is the date of the preliminary election.
Motion to suspend the rules, allow the clerk to answer
Second.
questions. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
We actually won't know if we're going to have a preliminary election until July 31st, when all the nomination papers are to be certified by.
Okay, but that would be the
But
date of
either
it.
way, if we do have a preliminary or if we don't have a preliminary, this has to be a special election because we can't have a ballot question on a preliminary election.
So
But
that-
either way, we have it in the budget to hold an election for September. So either way, it's not gonna.
Well, the only, my comment relating to this is a couple of things. I'm going to read from the State Elections Division, who I'd asked several months ago about this whole process, about when we could do it. The City Council chooses the date of the election, and I'm quoting from them, chooses the date of the election when they vote to place the question on the ballot. They may choose to place the question on the November city election ballot or to call a special election. Please note that your city may have a preliminary election in September, and ballot questions cannot be placed on preliminary election ballots. So what that would mean is a voter would have to come in, vote in one of the situations, come back out, re-register, and vote a second time. No?
No.
Be placed on a preliminary question. Can you explain that to me, please?
Yeah, it's just like we've had this happen in the past. I think it was when Don Humison was running for state senator, and we had it at the same time as a preliminary election. And basically, you're just handed 2 ballots. Just like a presidential election has 2 ballots, usually when there's questions, it's just 2 separate ballots. So if we were to have a preliminary, you'd be handed your ballot that had all of the local races on it, and you'd also be handed a second ballot, which would have the ballot question. And that ballot would state at the top that it was a special election ballot, opposed to a preliminary ballot.
So we're getting 2 ballots as we go in.
So the voting machines are going to be programmed to read both ballots, so it will just be 2 separate ballots, but they'll go into the voting machine one after another and tallied up that night, same as a
Okay.
regular election.
Thank you for that.
Same as if there was just questions on a ballot, like in a presidential election.
Okay, thank you for that update. Now let me offer my other comment on that. With all due respect to whether we should have done this in April, done this in June, done this in September. I am an extremely strong advocate that we should do it when we're going to get the most people voting. And when we get most people voting in a city, it's the general election. Not that we get what we should get to vote, but it is the most people we get to vote. Clearly, and whichever way this goes, if it goes on the ballot, my hope is that whichever side happens to win, that I hope it is a significantly tremendous majority, so that it is clearly the dramatic will of the majority. I would definitely not vote to put this on a September ballot. I am still working on what I would do regarding a November ballot, and I'm still listening, and I'm still hearing, and I'm still trying to find alternatives. But for a September ballot, almost without exception, we would have fewer people voting, which I don't want to, I won't even say the next comment, so I'll just pass on that.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment to change the language in 4 areas from elementary to middle school of 18A.
Second.
So say that again, Counselor?
In 4 areas, it says elementary. If you want to look down 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yep.
5, 6, 7,
I
8,
gotcha.
9, 10. Second word, 2 sentences.
Change to middle school.
Under the next paragraph, under shall, about 4 lines, elementary.
Yep.
Then 2 sentences after that.
So the motion is to change new elementary to middle school in both areas.
4
It's
areas.
4 areas on the top and the
Four
bottom.
areas, yeah. I got it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? They now shall read middle school.
Yeah, thank you. If I guess,
Counselor?
if I could speak on this order as well. I heard, I've been thinking a lot about this, obviously, like we all have. We've been thinking about this for, close to 2 years. And I heard a quote this weekend about how, we started from the bottom, now we're here. I guess I'm quoting the immortal words of street philosopher Drake. I never thought I would do that. I don't know why I just did that, but I think we started at the bottom and now we're here, as Drake so eloquently put. This has been a very time-consuming junction for all of us, all the city councilors. No matter if you're for it, putting the ballot 2 middle schools on, or you're against it. And that's what people need to remember. I've probably talked about, I don't know, a lot of people, got a lot of emails, a lot of Facebook messages, and the majority of the people I've been speaking to think that we're voting on the tax override tonight, which we're not. We, the fine people of the city council, are just voting or not voting to putting the question to the people of Holyoke. That's what we're doing. I think it's very misconstrued. I think that Facebook has blown this issue up on both sides of the issue. I think both sides have been ingenuous. I think it's been awful. This tonight and how we vote is the starting process. This is where we're going to begin. This is where people can now make educated arguments and decide whether the people are going to have a chance or if they should vote yes or no. This is where we start. So I think that the passion that's been happening in the city of Holyoke is a good thing. I think it just has to be limited sometimes, and I think that we should move forward and we should put this on the ballot because I think the people of Holyoke have the right to vote on this to affect their pocketbooks for years to come. Thank you.
All right. Counselor Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Counselor Leahy and what Counselor Murphy both said. I don't want to expand on that. One other thing I want to make really clear is, and I want to thank you, Counselor McGee, for the work you've done in looking for alternative funding sources for the governor, and we need that extra time. And when I hear about the escalation cost between a September and a November ballot, that escalation cost is minuscule compared to the amount of additional funding that it gives us an extra 60 days to try and achieve that level of funding so that we can reduce that cost and give the voters a more accurate picture of what the real number could be for us. And those are significant dollars. We're talking not just 1 or 2%, not just little twinks in the formula, but going after large packages of money. We might not get it, but we need that extra 60 days. And that's why I'm for this being on the ballot, but I really want to see it on the November ballot. And that's, I think, vital, that kind of money.
Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been a long 2-year process, both for the City Council and a slightly longer process for the schools in putting this proposal in front of us. We have learned over the past 2 years through 2 prior votes that funded the architectural design and the site development, pre-site development work for this project. We learned that this is a master plan not just about middle schools, but it's about all of our schools. By deciding to build a middle school and then eventually deciding to build 2 middle schools, which has its own argument within itself, the city is looking to consolidate its elementary school children into fewer buildings and much more cost-effective way of providing education to our elementary students. In doing so, we're looking to not just build 2 middle schools, but to build 2 state-of-the-art middle schools to bring Holyoke into the century of where it's important to understand that children don't learn the way we learned, that children don't learn. They need the technology. They need to understand from the very young ages of what technical support is and how it works to learn your P's and Q's. We learned a lot through this process, and in the beginning, it actually started in this room when we were first talking with Dr. Zreich and about the need to build and about looking at building around the Lawrence School. Not a middle school at that time. We were talking about elementary schools. Throughout the process, one of our counselors joined the building committee. Mike Sullivan represented us well, brought us back information, and was our voice the best to let them know what the important issues are. We also learned very late in the game from our development consultant and from our financial advisor that the state has changed the rules, not the MSBA, but the state, the legislature, somewhere along the line. When the last time when Terry Murphy was with us, a couple of us in this room, we rebuilt the school. We were funded at 90%. And I heard one speaker this evening say that about 90, most states do a 90% reimbursement. 80% is very generous and reasonable. We are a gateway community, the lowest per capita income in the Commonwealth. We automatically qualify for 80%, but we can't get there because somewhere along the line, the rules were changed because Joe DiNucci was the state auditor. We learned this from the executive director last week of the MBSA. Joe DiNucci said, there are too many communities that are free for all spending this type of money knowing they get reimbursed. And that was probably a good point. But what the result of that was a formula, a construction formula. Now you can hear someone say we get for eligible cost 80% reimbursement. That's not true because we also heard the executive director of the MBA say our project is not a Taj Mahal project. It was well thought out, cost efficient, needed, and everything. And I give a lot of credit to Whitney Anderson for that because I've worked with him on a number of projects in the past. It's a project that fits the cost efficient, cost effective needs of the state and the taxpayers, who we all are state taxpayers, and the money should be coming back our way at 80%, not 58, 59%. We learned that this formula is relatively new, but it's been in place for a few years, and we learned that there are incentives to get us above the construction cap. The problem is affluent communities can get the incentives. Gateway communities can't, the ones that need it the most. We learned a lot this past year. Miguel Arce was around when there was a suit against the state because Chapter 70 monies were not fair to the gateway communities of the Commonwealth. There's a lot of money coming down the pipeline for education in Chapter 70 dollars, but these votes that they're taking right now are across the board. Aaron Vega's bill is to say, hey, wait a minute, we're in favor of education in every community in this city, but don't forget, the ills of poverty, and the gateway communities don't create poverty, they service poverty. We share the responsibilities with the entire Commonwealth of paying for the ills of poverty, which means there are more special education needs, there's a higher crime rate, there are more things going on in a gateway community than in a bedroom community. And the extra formula should be weighted to bring extra of our own tax dollars back into the city to take care of these needs. We've learned a lot over the last 2 years. The master plan of this project is something that is part of the scheme, and it is part of the entire school system, not just middle schools. But most important, our financial advisor, who's been our advisor, she is a top management agent for Hilltop Securities in Boston, and she's been with us since the late 70s. Said to us that you cannot afford to pay for the bonding to pay for schools out of your operating costs. She complimented the city for keeping our operating costs down since our 1992 financial crisis, and she complimented the city for not letting government grow at a crazy pace, but to end keeping a good stabilization fund. But she did say the only way you're going to reasonably pay for this is through some debt exclusion ride, and at the same time to keep the cost that we actually borrowed down. The total cost of the projects we know is $132 million, $133 million. Right now, the formula would give us back $76 million, which sounds great. It's not. It's not enough. And Councilor Leahy is absolutely right. We're not voting on the actual bond this evening. We're voting on putting a question on the ballot, as we've been asked to by a number of our constituents, and because it's a debt exclusion override. If we are going to explore that, it is the only way to get a debt exclusion override passed is on the ballot. We have an understanding that there are taxpayers out there that are in the pinch. They have every right in the world to be mad. They have every right in the world to understand that we're asking for more taxes, and at this point, if the formula doesn't change, we would be asking for too much. And that, my friends, is every voice here, ours has already started, needs to be heard from the governor to the legislature to the state senate, that the formula has to change. If we're voting on the bond this evening, I'd be voting no, because it will kill a lot of our businesses. It will hurt a lot of our residential families. Even renters will feel the pinch of a debt exclusion override, because rents will go up and taxes will go up on the buildings for which they are renting in. We need to work stronger. I agree with Councilor Murphy and Councilor Sullivan. I asked for the amendment in committee to postpone this until November, not just because we have more voters coming out in November, but we need more time to get our delegation working on this, and we need more time for the state leadership to step up and understand it's not just a problem for Holyoke. Lawrence already failed because of this issue. Other communities need to build schools, and we need the state to get back to a reasonable reimbursement, not to put the burden totally on the taxpayers of any one community without a reasonable reimbursement formula. And that is what we have to fight for. The final vote we take is the bond, which is in the Finance Committee. That may not take place for a month or two or maybe more. It should take place before this question is on the ballot, because the voters should know exactly what we're going to be asked to borrow. But if we have to ask to borrow, we ask for the full amount, but if we have to ask to borrow that we're actually going to be looking for $55 million, it's not going to work. We need to change that formula, and we need to continue our battle. But in the meantime, this is the deadline to vote to put the ballot on the question, to allow our developer and our architects to get to the MSBA with the final figures, that they can take their final vote in August, and we can be set to go. I vote in favor of putting the ballot question on for all those reasons, But I will also really encourage everyone to reconsider, if you just voted to change it from November to September, to put it on in November. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think that Councilor McGivern raises some important points about what, as Councilor Sullivan noted, an extra 60 days could do. But I do want to just explain my motion for moving to September 24th. We already know that there's a $1 million minimum escalation if we move the September vote to November instead. It's not guaranteed how much additional funding could come in. So to weigh $1 million versus some unknown number, I think it's really difficult to justify November at this point when we're looking at the escalation costs. Second of all, we have no mayoral election happening this November. It's the first time we've moved to a 4-year mayoralty, and we will not be having a mayoral election. If you look at the numbers for the mayoral election, the mayor typically gets double what even the highest earning at-large councilor gets in terms of votes. So I'm not sure that a November election is going to have extremely robust turnout compared to a September special election for the ballot question here. And then finally, the thing that's really important to me and that makes me favor September overall is the fact that with a September ballot date, there is a construction plan that allows the schools to open in the successive September. And that means that we get to get our children out to school learning in these new buildings on the first day of school. If we delay to November, then it's not clear that we can open for the first day of school in September. Buildings would be available sometime in mid-year, and so what do? We ask teachers and families to rearrange their lives and classrooms to move into these new schools mid-year, or do we leave these buildings vacant after they're built for a half a year before we actually get students in there? So, either way, I'm thrilled that we're at this point where it seems we're talking about a ballot question moving to the public for a vote. September or November both have, good points and qualities to them. I'll just note again that I favor September mostly because of the idea that we get to send our students to school on that September day as opposed to sometime in the middle of the year or perhaps even the following year. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson Burgos?
Yes, I'd just like to read this for the record. So every single one of us has heard from countless stakeholders from all over the city on this. The fact that people in this city are so motivated to be heard when it comes to addressing our future educational and economic need should be commended. What we have in front of us today should not really be about whether I or any other city councilor here supports this proposal, whether or not we individually want to build these schools. This is about an opportunity we should be placing in the hands of the voters in deciding on our city's future. What we have is the opportunity for people of Holyoke to have a voice in this matter. We live with the democratic ideals, and we should not forget that. The magnitude of this decision is something every voter should have a chance to weigh in on their own, and not to have 13 people decide it for them. I will be voting to send this to the ballot. After all of the work that has been done to study on how we can serve our students best, after multiple ideas that were considered as part of the process, wasting all of that time and those resources by blocking this vote, not allowing the voters to have their own voice in this is not democratic. I see no good argument for standing in the way. If we put our trust in the voters to elect every single one of us here, there is no reason not to trust them on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking all the folks that showed up today at City Council chambers to speak, either in favor or against what we are voting on tonight, which is, as has been said before, putting the question on the ballot. not about building the schools themselves, but putting the question on the ballot. Those are two different things. So I want to thank all of the folks that took their time to show up here on a Tuesday night. I'm sure many of you would have other places you would love to be instead of in these chambers, so thank you for joining us. I've always said that the area for the public is way too small compared to how big these 13 seats circle is, and maybe someday that'll change. But I want to say that I appreciate when folks come in for public comment because it gives us the opportunity to have on the record what many of us hear through emails, texts, phone calls, Facebook messages. I can only think of one other issue since I've been in this position since 2013, well, January 2014 when I got sworn in, that has been, in my opinion, this kind of emotional and where I've heard so much from so many people. And that other issue was the Polish Historic District. And so some of you are nodding your heads because maybe you were part of that too. So I remember, the fact that we took the time to hear the feedback and that was not successful, that vote. I voted in favor of the Polish Historic District. That did not happen. And now we have an empty lot where that church used to be. But my point here is that I encourage you all, as you're learning about issues that we are voting on, because the agenda is posted here in person in City Hall and also on our website in advance of the meeting, that you continue to flood these chambers this way. Not only for one issue every 6 to 9 months or even once a year, but constantly, because I think it's a great reminder for all of us of why we are in these positions. I want to remind you also that every 2 years, each of these 13 seats are open. None of these seats belong to any of us. That means if you are not happy with who is representing you, either at large or in your ward, and that includes this seat itself, I encourage you to run. I encourage you to challenge the system that is in place. Because every 2 years, these 13 seats are open. None of them belong to anyone. So please keep that in mind. And lastly, I want to say that when we sit here and talk about things that have been issues in the city for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I cannot not think about the fact that responsibility belongs to many people. And that it's sometimes issues that very well precede this mayoral administration, but includes folks that are in this chamber. And I always ask the question, if this is an issue that happened 15 years ago and you were on the council, what did you do about this? So I think it's a valid question to ask. It's nothing against our senior members. It's just a valid question that you, all of you, as residents of this city, have the power to ask. So I want to remind you of that. And last but not least, I will be voting, of course, yes, to put this on the ballot. I have never had an issue with putting this on the ballot. There was something out there because I wasn't at a rally. It must be because it's like, people, you need to know that I can't go to every rally. But in all fairness, just wanted to put that out there because I think that the way these chambers are full right now is how it should be most of the time. Thank you.
Councilor LeBoer Martinez.
Thank you, Josie. I echo a lot of the information you shared tonight. And again, I just want to give a little history that when Dr. Shrike came on board or took the receivership, I was one of the only residents, actually, I inquired to sit on the stakeholders redesign team. And what that kind of charge was giving to us was to work around the turnaround plan that was going to be done for our children. I've been sat in the last few days, and of course I'm not the type of person I like to be on Facebook and utilizing that to communicate. But yes, I have been communicating with people either by phone calls or either emails directly, because it's brought the division that us versus them, or who deserve this or not, and meaning the children of this community. But I want to go back to the situation that when I was asked to serve on the stakeholder committee, One of the charges was to go look at our schools, and people do not know that I was part of that 5, 6 when he got on board. One of the schools that I visited, and I was so more embarrassed than anything else. I was the only representative in this stakeholder group from people from the outside coming out of Boston and other places to represent us. And Dr. Shrike chose the people, so I had no control over that. But when I went to Donahue School, that's an example that I want to use. We visit other schools, in particular the Donahue School. If you hear my voice today, it's because I'm a very allergic individual who I suffer from allergies. So depending on the weather, depending on the mold or the situation where I may be in, it causes my allergies. I walked in this room that it was supposed to be the computer IT area for our children. We had rain, we had water rain coming down the walls. That they have moved the computers to one corner so that the children continue to work out of. I said, our children deserve better. And I remember it was between the springtime as we're visiting these schools, and it was so hot, and the children, some of them had their heads down because they were hot. They were saying, "Miss, I'm hot," communicating either in Spanish, some of in English. I say, "How do you like the classroom?" And all they kept saying is, "It's hot." They don't have no air conditioning. So the vote that we're voting on tonight is to allow the people to decide what is in the best interest of our community at this point. I have grandchildren in the schools. I'm not in the advocacy of that part of that because I want to be clear that I just think that every child deserves the right to have a equity, not only equity when it comes to, but the environmental issues that we're facing in this community. If you look at the statistics, we have the highest asthma across the state. And we wonder why we have attendance issues. We wonder why we have children that are not able to make it to school tomorrow, and there's assumptions that these parents are irresponsible. And it's because if I myself right now having to go to work the way that I do because I have to do this, I'm quite sure parents are saying, I'm not going to send my child to school and have an asthma attack and then having to pull them out. This has to do with our environment. If we don't pursue the opportunity now and we continue to complain about our attendance issues, you know what? I urge and I will charge and I will step down from this particular board and assure that then we take a different stand where we will sue the city of Holyoke for the environmental issues that our children are facing in our school system. And I want to take that as a something that should be recorded because it's unethical, it's an unfair situation, and this should not be allowed in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's hard to follow up on a lawsuit comment, but I'll do my best. I think really there are many voices in the community. Many of them haven't come to the microphone for various reasons, but I know that many of them have reached out to all of us in other ways. I want to preface my remarks that I want to read into the record similar to Councilor Anderson Burgos by saying there are many of us on this council who have been advocating for years for the city to develop a fiscal plan, to set up a debt plan. We know that along with school improvements, we have many capital improvement needs in the city that have gone ignored for years. We've just had many discussions about over 125 buildings throughout the city that, look like they're in a war zone. So the needs in the city are great. This is the biggest one to come before us in the last few years. But keep in mind that we've known this was coming. We all see what is going on in the city. And yet, for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and we've all been sitting here, all of us, we haven't come up with a plan. There's nobody in this room, for example, that didn't know the schools were being sued. Everybody in this room knew 3 years ago something was going to cost money in the city. There was no plan, and there was no money available to deal with that known problem. That was a $500,000 problem, not a $132 million project. So this is the context that we sit in. And so I have no argument with all the work, and I have respect for all of the work that the people have done that have come up with an ideal plan to better our schools. However, the nuts and bolts work of making a fiscal plan to actually have it be able to happen have not happened. And for that reason, we're now sitting here saying the only option before us, and you've heard speakers before me say that, the only option before us is to go for a debt exclusion override onto the homeowners, the taxpayers, the big businesses, the little businesses. And you've heard people come to the microphone. They've been largely ignored. The general manager of our mall, I've never seen him before this year. The mall pays 15% of our taxes. The mall provides a significant number of jobs to people who live here. When they come down and tell us this action will create a severe hardship, they're not coming down playing politics. They're in the business of trying to survive as a mall. And malls have closed. We're talking 30 years of debt onto people who won't have an opportunity to vote for it. And are you all sure that we're going to have a mall that's paying $8 million plus a year for the next 30 years? Because that's a pretty big gamble. Because last week, for the city councilors who missed the budget meeting, the assessor came in and said they are currently in discussions because the mall is seeking to be reevaluated because of the nature of the business change, because of the empty space they have. They're already feeling that they're being squeezed and that this is likely to happen, and they are taking a defensive posture. Our assessor reported this at the meeting. So if that $8 million turns into $7 million, it's going to go on to the remaining taxpayers that we have in the city. 10,100 is the number that the assessor gave to us. So in that context, along with that picture, we are sitting here looking at a budget today that's growing by 5.7%. That's before us, that includes a debt expense of over $4 million this year. We have already approved, and I can't tell you the exact number because I've been asking for numbers for weeks, and we just got a bunch of spreadsheets today. I haven't had a chance to really look through them all, but it looks to me like we've already approved as a body, and I can be corrected on this number, around $40 million more dollars that haven't even hit the operating budget yet. Along with that, we have other federally mandated capital expenses that we will be obligated to pay. So if we put this in a debt exclusion, which you're correct will not sit in the budget, it's still taxes being paid by each and every taxpayer. Where will we go when the federal government comes knocking on our door and says, you have to do your next CSO project now, because we already gave you 10 extra years? We're gonna have no room to move. You know, and I've heard the argument that we should have a vote on this in the public. Well, the public has elected us to represent them. It's our duty to inform ourselves, to know what we're recommending to the public. Do not make the mistake of thinking that if we vote to put this on the ballot, we are not recommending that it's a doable and okay thing for the city. We absolutely are. That is what the vote says to the voters, because it requires 9 of us to approve it. Why? Because we have the fiduciary responsibility to do our due diligence. People who are working on a school building project and the school education project are not and don't have all the access to the information that we have sitting here in budget hearings, finance committee hearings, and the like. And I would just say to you, we just got the debt numbers today. We are in the process of looking at the budget. If we were strong financially, we would not have to be looking at a debt exclusion. We would be able to be looking at our bonding. And I also want to say something about the $1 million for 30 years that the school is saying they will put in to reduce this bond. If that is actually factually correct, and that is an actual real number, then we should be able to go to bond for $102 million, not $132 million. But these are projections of what might be able to happen. The only real number before us is the $132 million with $76 million from the school state board. I've reached out to the budget conference, one of the people I know on the budget conference committee. I haven't heard back from them yet, but the executive director of the MSBA said it did not pass the House. It passed the Senate and got sent to conference committee. And he also said nothing's going retro. So even if you're for putting it on the ballot, don't rush it before we can even get the answers to the questions that are out there. We don't even have the basic numbers all pulled together about what our debt load will be for the city in the next 5 years in the regular budget. That's our responsibility. We're elected to represent the people. And I've been hearing from people at least 3 to 1 in the ward I represent that they do not want this on the ballot. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, first, let me, and someone asked me to get a clarification, so I'm going to see if I can get it. But it's my understanding that the construction of the school on Chestnut Street will no longer use the Lawrence Playground for parking. Has that been confirmed? Can anybody answer that?
We can suspend the rules and ask.
If we could suspend the rules.
Motion
so
is
I can get-
suspend the rules to allow project manager to answer the question.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? If you can come up to the mic just to answer the question, please.
Is that on?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm Margaret Wood. I'm the owner's project manager for the school project. So yes, in answer to your question, there was a question that was brought to the team's attention about the use of some space that turned out to be designated as parkland. It wasn't in the city records, so we've reconfigured where the proposed parking was to leave that space as park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of time in. This has been obviously something I've tried to work to come to a reasonable conclusion, and I'm sure there's going to be people on both sides that think my conclusions have not been reasonable. But let me just start off by saying my first thought is I'm just disappointed in the options, in the option that we have been given. You know, it's take this or leave it. And that's what we were basically told last week. But let me just go. I believe, and I could be wrong, but everything I've heard leads me to believe that one of the goals of this was to eliminate the K through 8 and to reestablish middle schools. And I will say, and then close some of the elementary schools. And I think there's some merit in that observation. And I have visited, since I became a member of this council, I have visited 8 and toured and visited and tried to look at and see classrooms in 8 of the 11 schools that we have. So,
One second. In the hallway, please, if Councilor is speaking. Thank you.
all right. So I do think there's some merit to that. I mean, I honestly do think that. The planning for the funding as part of that discussion seems to me to have been decided or noted only after we made a commitment to the MSBA, which locked us into the city, into the only 2-school choice. And I don't think I think all of that process, and again, I was not here, so maybe I'm wrong, but based on what I'm hearing and then reviewing the tape of our financial advisor, I believe it was in November, December, saying that the only way the council could do it was to do it through a debt exclusion, which indicates to me that that's when that particular financial aspect of this came to fruition. It looks to me like right now our choices are not great choices. One, we can raise taxes by approximately 7% on all the taxpayers, or we can have no new schools. That to me is a gamble, which can and probably will have negative consequences one way or the other. It's my opinion, neither of those should have been the only choice. Other choices should have been discussed, including the potential funding mechanisms prior to the city making any commitment to the state. And I wonder why we put forth a proposal with MSBA locking us into a project for 2 schools when we had yet to determine how we could or would pay for it. And again, I was not here, and maybe this discussion took place before that meeting, but from what I gather, it did not. I believe it was not until last fall that the city council was informed about the debt exclusion option, long after the city had committed to the MSBA. The argument for 2 schools seems to have a motivation in the idea of equity, and I'm all for giving kids a good education, but I reject the argument for several reasons. If equity means every student needs to be in a new school, Holyoke can never have an equitable education system unless we build all new schools. Rather, I believe equity means that we need to put each student into a quality classroom, and that does mean we need to do things to do that, with a great teacher and with the tools necessary for them to learn. That, to me, would be equity. If passed, the next 3 years we'll be putting current students into an educational environment which we have been considering as poor by many. The plan for moving 282 students from Peck to one site and moving approximately 266 Veritas students to another site would seem to create a more crowded building for educational purposes, putting them into the same situation the plan is trying to eliminate. While I respect Councilor Lisi's views, which were written in the letter, on the debt exclusion, I cannot agree with the idea that a debt exclusion is the best way to build schools. I would argue that better planning as to what the city needs to have and putting money aside within the budget to do that would have made more sense. If Holyoke has had this 15-year trajectory of growth, it should also have been able to plan for large capital investments and expenditures like this. Councilor Lisi highlights the debt exclusions of East Hampton and Granby, but I wonder why we don't compare Holyoke to Chicopee and Springfield. Holyoke's average per capita income in 2018 was estimated to be $15,571. Chicopee's $18,943. Springfield's $14,334. East Hampton's $27,336. Granby's $29,897. It should also be noted that the median income in owner-occupied homes in Granby is over $91,000. In East Hampton, almost $75,000. I would argue that the city financial leaders should be planning ahead to cover the city's share, and clearly, at this point, other than a debt exclusion, that has not been done. Did Chicopee have a debt exclusion to afford to remodel the DuPont School with a city share of a $42 million project of only $12 million, and MSBA paying almost $30 million? Was Springfield able to build the Putnam Vocational for $114 million, with MSBA paying $92 million plus? If the answer is yes, that would seem to be the right way to do these kind of projects. I am also very disappointed with the MSBA, that knowing our financial situation, that they are of the opinion that there is only one option that they will fund. And again, I put that the same rolling the dice. They may win that option, and they may lose that option. And when they do, if they do, we all lose, either way. If their goal is to improve educational facilities in Holyoke, and that's what I hope it would be, and the rest of the state, then it should be that they do not dictate how that will be done regardless of the city's financial position. And that appears to be what they are doing. Take the 70 million plus or get out of line. I would think that they would be a little more reasonable about that. I have advocated for the city to build one school at the Chestnut Street site, not because I wanted to create problems, but because I wanted to be more economically feasible. And that would still allow the schools to move to a middle school model. Would it mean we'd have to do other things? Yes, it would. I did so because I believe that it would provide chances to improve the educational environment for all K-8 students, and also be potentially less damaging to our economic viability. It should also be noted that if the current 2nd through 4th grade students continue in the public schools, they will exceed the 550 preferred enrollment by 126. That is without any growth that proponents expect should these schools be built. Something else to consider. What will the programs be in each school? Clearly, one will have half of its enrollment in a dual language program, which based on my observations is an excellent program. And I realize those of you that have your students or your children in that program at Metcalf School, it's a tight environment. There's no question about that. They are getting a quality education in a tough environment. That school obviously is going to be one that you're looking at to change, and clearly, to me, we can do that. Unless the results indicate otherwise, I would expect Veritas Prep, who in their situation in Springfield has had outstanding scores, it would be, unless they are unable to perform in that case in Holyoke, that they would be the main occupant of one of the schools. People have said to me that won't be, but if they are performing well and we don't do that, then we got to question why. That would assume that the STEM Academy, assuming they are moving from Dean, would be the other program in one of the schools. Lastly, let me deal with the idea of democracy that requires this to go on the ballot. If that were the case, clearly the legislature would have allowed citizens to petition to put debt exclusions on the ballot, and that is not the case. A more thought-out process would have been bringing these financial concerns to the City Council when considering the various options and prior to the commitment to the MSBA. I'm going to make a few suggestions, and again, I expect there'll be people that say he's off his rocker, but we'll go with it. Number one, I would strongly encourage the mayor to consider submitting within the city budget a $27 million 25-year level debt bond, which would basically cover one of the schools, which would then allow the debt exclusion to only cover the other. What that does, and this is all with the idea of we need to keep this as affordable to every taxpayer as possible. If we were to do that, and we were to do a 25-year bond, what we would save in terms of interest over the life of this would be about $5 or $6 million. What we would be doing in terms of reducing the impact on the taxpayers with the debt exclusion, we would take the average homeowner $1.30 per thousand tax increase, and that would be reduced to 67 cents tax increase. We would be taking the average business $2.70 tax increase and reducing that to $1.39 tax increase, basically knocking them down so it would be approximately 51% of what the debt exclusion would cost us now. The negative impact in terms of that, long-term economically, I would hope would be at least half less than what it's going to be if we pass the debt exclusion as it is proposed. And there are I have obviously had quite a few meetings. I've got an order that I co-signed with Councilor Vacan for tonight to start using some of the marijuana money. If the expectation is that that money is going, and by one other point I want to make on that, that would, breaking that down to 25 that would be an average $1.8 million within our city budget that we would have to bond for. And I hear that we're taking in a lot of new money, we're bringing in a lot of new things. I'm saying that we need to, in fairness to the current taxpayers, we need to find a way to use that money to reduce their burden should this debt exclusion be passed. And with that, I appreciate all the patience people have had. I appreciate, for the most part, the respect that people have shown. And again, I would hope that we put this on the ballot, if it's going on the ballot, in November and not in September. Thank you.
There's no one further, so for clarification, the order was amended first to add middle schools to where it said new elementaries. There was 4 spots that has been changed. Also to change from November 5th to November 24th, 2019.
September.
That's what I meant, thank you. It's a long night already, September 24th. So that's where it currently stands. Clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for that as the way it is written and with the amendments.
Can I ask a question before
Yes,
we vote?
Councilor Houser.
If the votes are not there for the September option, do we have the option to reconsider and then go back to November and do another vote that way if necessary?
Motion would be, if it doesn't pass, the motion from someone to be reconsider it.
Mhm.
We take it back up, and then you'd have to make a motion to.
A new amendment?
Amend it.
Okay. Yep, thank you.
Count.
Can you explain this vote again?
So current vote is it's September 24th, 2019 with the middle school language. Clerk is going to call a roll. You need 9 votes for this ballot for September 24th, 2019. If you do not get 9 votes, then it'll fail. Of which then you can do nothing, or you can do a motion to reconsider to take it back up, with then you'd be asking for November 5th.
Okay, thank you.
With a motion to do November 5th.
Yep. Thank you.
Everyone in agreement? Everyone understand where we are? Yep. All right, so the clerk will call a roll if you vote for the ballot question the way it's been amended.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
No.
Murphy,
No.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon,
No.
Valentine,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
No.
Bresnahan,
No.
Leahy. 8 yeas, 5 nays.
Make a motion to reconsider.
Second.
Second.
So hold on. So we record it. With your vote, it was 8-7. It did not pass. You need 9. Motion is to reconsider from
8-5.
Councilor
8-5.
McGivern. 8-5, sorry.
We're not
Yeah.
15 anymore.
I know.
They voted for that a couple years ago.
So, of which motion to reconsider was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
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 Chairs in doubt. Show of hands.
Under
to
discussion,
reconsider.
Mr. President?
Under discussion first, Councilor McGivern.
Thank you. There's 10 people that have talked about making a positive vote this evening to put the ballot question on the ballot. 3 of those 10 people have a problem with the September. We didn't debate that earlier, which I think is my fault when we made the original amendment to change it from November back to September. The arguments have been made that, we need more time to discuss with the state the formula of the reimbursement, more time, or also to make the most favorable amount of voters turnout, for this important question itself. And, quite frankly, 7 and 3 is 10. And I think we've sent the message that, if we can keep it in November, we will be gladly to vote for the ballot question to be placed on the ballot. I wish we had debated it earlier, but I think it's not too late to do that if we reconsider it and take one more vote this evening.
Councilor Bresnahan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for everybody coming down and all the emails I've gotten and phone calls and text messages from everybody. To Councilor Valentine's point, it's a shame that we don't get this much passion in many of the very hot topics that we discuss, and this is certainly one of the top ones that I can remember in my tenure here. I just had a couple thoughts that I'd like to share. There was a committee made, and the receiver was involved, my colleague to my right was involved. They had a year's worth of meetings, formal meetings, and they came up with an idea that the only way they could, get a new educational system within the city of Hoyoke was to raise property taxes. I'm strongly against that concept, and I'll be brief, and then we can go to the vote because I think everybody wants to go home and we have a full agenda anyways. But philosophically, as the receiver pointed out himself, the MCAS scores are the highest they have ever been since they have been implemented, and we did that with the buildings that we have. Do new schools make better facilities? No question about it. But the city of Hoyoke does not have a money tree in the backyard. The economic development for this city of Hoyoke is disastrous. It has not improved. There have been not any economic developments within the city of Hoyoke to speak of. Very few. We just lost a house on Yale Street that paid $11,000 that's going to a nonprofit. We lost the Sears building up by the mall. That is now a facility that is a union hall. So we continue to lose taxable funds to non-taxable agencies. Most of this probably the public isn't aware of. If you didn't realize that Yale Street was just sold to a private company, you don't know that, that we just lost $12,000 in taxes coming to the city that we're never going to get back. And it's happening everywhere. There's two by where I live. I'm not complaining about the programs that are there. That's great. They need to have a home. I agree with that. The city of Hoyoke has become the social economic capita of the entire state. We continue to get these programs sent to us and no one is going to be vocal and say, enough is enough. You look out these very walls of City Hall and you see nothing but nonprofits. I mean, where do we think the money's going to come from? I mean, the malls are closing, and I'm not saying we have to be beholden to any mall or the biggest taxpayer, but we did lose the coal mine. That was about $5 million a year that's not coming into our coffers. These tax dollars help us fund what we need. They help us fund the 8 firefighters that are lacking. They help us buy new police cruisers. They help us fix the potholes. I have businesses coming to me. They're going out for lunch and they're stomping over needles. All Hoyoke workers. This is Hoyoke businesses that we're saying, we can't fix the potholes. And yeah, we did have to black out a fire truck. So we're looking at closing fire stations. But we're going to raise your property taxes. We're going to raise the values. And I agree. The city of Hoyoke needs new schools. No one's arguing that point. But you know what? Nobody's arguing the point of where is the money going to come from. And for people to sit here and think that it's like a $28 increase, it's really not that small. The conditions of the streets. Look at City Hall. Look at City Hall Annex. Look at Heritage Park, that street. You drive into Hoyoke on any route, and you're right off of 391, you see vacant buildings, you see graffiti. Let's fix the infrastructure. Let's try one new school. Let's try renovating. We just spent $14 million on doing renovations to Morgan. We spent $20 million at Hoyoke High School. And when people say there's been no schools, I went to Kelly School when it was 4 or 5 years old. I went to Kelly School. And the problems that the city of Hoyoke faced in 1979 was I at Kelly School are the same socio-economical problems that we're facing now. We have no jobs, we have a lot of poverty, and we have no economic development. If we had those pieces, that is what changes the Hoyoke, and that's where the money's going to come from. You can't just say, hey, you know what? Let's put it on the mall. They're paying us $8 million. The CPA tax was another $60,000, $70,000, and we voted for the CPA tax. I made the same argument then. This is not the right time. We just got notified that it used to be $1 for $1. Now they're giving 11 cents for $1, for those of you aware of the Community Preservation Act tax that people are paying. When people talk about the monies going on to the renters, I will tell you this. Any subsidies that are provided from the Hoyoke Housing Authority, sanctioned from HUD or from DHCD, will not be raised. It's not going to happen. They can't do it. Fair market value of rent, sanctioned by the federal government through HUD, through the Hoyoke Housing Authority, through Section 8 carriers, through the MRVPs, they will not be impacted. The building owners' taxes will go up, but the folks that are living under Section 8, you can't raise it higher than what the fair market value already is. And I do this for a living. And I've been doing it for 10 years now. And I'm telling you, if the city of Springfield decided to raise property taxes $25 million, the 500 units that I manage, I cannot raise 1 penny of their rent against them because HUD doesn't care whether or not the city of Holyoke builds new schools. And that's a fact. I would also like to point out that, you know, this, again, and I don't want to, I'm not want to pinpoint anything here, but if you look at, you know, the mayor is a proponent of this. The mayor didn't go to one meeting for the building committee. He's on that committee. He didn't go to one meeting. You look at the meeting notes. A lot of this stuff the public is probably not getting handed to, but we are getting handed to that. He didn't go to one meeting. It's just like, if you're such a proponent for it, well, I can understand missing a meeting or 2 meetings, 3 meetings, 4 meetings, 5 meetings, 6, but 12 meetings? You didn't go to one meeting about the building committee to decide to override Proposition 2.5 in order to build 2 new schools? I commend Terry Murphy. This guy absolutely did his due diligence on this matter. He sent the building, Dr. Reich, 25 well-thought-out, beautifully articulated questions. I'm not going to read them, but I'm going to just highlight a couple things. These are some of the answers. It hasn't been determined. Would discuss options. Might be moved to other sites. There should be limited space. We don't have a game plan for where these children are going to be moved. And, you know, coming from a kid, I was born and raised here, my 4 brothers. I went to Highland School that was torn down. And believe me, you want to talk about a place that didn't have air conditioners and the windows didn't work? That's where I went to grade school. So, I mean, I feel the necessity of the need for the schools. But there's another piece of this that people have to start realizing and accepting. Housing and infrastructure is a huge problem. The passion for good homes where people live in the blocks that they live in, making sure the landlords are providing the basic necessities of life. That's important, but we don't have those arguments. You know, again, I have to speak for folks that can attend these meetings, that are taxpayers, they're elders, they might not have children because they've moved on. But in the last few years, we've increased the sewer rate, the permit fees. You own a restaurant, well, guess what? You're not, instead of paying $50 a year for your food permit, now you're paying $150. Then they added a dumpster permit fee. So you got a dumpster at your restaurant, you're paying a fee for that. You're paying a fee for the common victualer's license. So to own a restaurant, the hockey rink in Holyoke has a snack shop. They pay $500 to run a snack shop for like 6 months. And it's like, how much longer can we be going to that pot? I am pro-school, I have children, I'm pro-education. I went to Highland School, Kelly School, I went to Lynch, I went to Sullivan. I've gone to probably more schools than anybody that in these chambers, because we just, every time something happened, they transfer us to a different school. I went to probably 7 different public schools in Holyoke. You know, and it was a great time, I loved it. Many of my best, closest friends went to Dean Vocational. That was state of the art. And they graduated. 1 guy owns his own, 2 guys own heating and ventilating business, 1 guy owns an electrician
On the
business.
question, on the motion.
No, hey, I let you, how, wow. That's
Hey,
rude.
order, hey,
That's
order.
rude. Jesus.
Come on.
We're just getting off
No,
topic here. We're talking about friends.
We'll get back.
Order,
We'll
please.
get
Order,
back to
please.
tax. We'll get back to tax abatements. with
Order.
you. Don't worry about it.
Counselor Bartley. Counselor Bartley.
Call me out, call her out.
That's all right.
Counselor Bartley, you're out of order.
Let's.
Counselor
Have some
President.
leadership.
That's all right.
Counselor
That's all right.
President has a microphone.
Listen, the
You're out
bottom
of
line.
order.
The bottom line is that we all want better education facilities for our children. There's no doubt about it. But we have to have a better plan to develop. This plan was dropped on our lap. We don't have $132 million to bond. We just don't. The fact of the matter is that people and businesses are going to close. And I'm talking about the bodegas. I'm not talking about just the Holyoke Mall. Nick's Nest, Pix, Jimmy Lavelle, the guy that owns a restaurant and a home. How long can we keep going to these folks that own businesses because they're taking the burden on? So think about that. You know, anyone that decides not to shop in Holyoke and they go to other little communities because it's better, think about going to bodegas and supporting the businesses in Holyoke, because if you don't be asking them to flip the bill for this, because that's what we're doing at the end of the day. And quite frankly, it disappoints me that my colleagues who are, you know, saying, you got to get 2,000 votes, I'm against this. It seems that you fill a room up and people's opinions change. And I think that some folks might want it on the September ballot because it's an election in November. We haven't been given enough time to vet this out. We're getting weak answers from the superintendent about what's going to happen. The infrastructure, we just need more infrastructure, we need more money, and we have to figure out where we're going to get it. And until that point, I'm not comfortable with just putting a ballot question that says, hey, do you want 2 new schools? Yeah, that's great, but do you know the ramifications of what you're asking for? I don't think you all do. Thank you.
Anything further? Counselor Bartley.
Thank you.
Audience, please.
Thank you. I really appreciate everybody's comments, and especially the members of the public. I take a lot of notes when the public speaks, and I've got 2 pages plus of notes. So every member that spoke, I really heard what you said and took it to heart. So thank you for being here. I only want to point out one, just my friend Miguel Arce. He's just been a legend in City of Holyoke for years, and when he speaks, I'm sorry we only gave him a minute. And I'm sorry he actually adhered to the rule of a minute, too, because I would have liked to hear more from Miguel. So he's been a friend of the Bartley family for, 40-plus years anyhow, 50 years anyhow. So Miguel, thank you for being here. That's the only name I want to point out. I'm going to vote no on this, Mr. President. I'm going to make a couple, I hope, brief points since my... We vote here every December, as it turns out, to raise taxes. It's this body that takes that vote. The way the legislature set up the law, as another counselor pointed out, it's this body that has to put it to the public. So there's a 2-step process. So this body has to endorse it, and this body has to move it to a vote. So that's how serious the legislature was about tax overrides. So I mean, to hear this is, let the people vote. I hope they know that the people don't vote. The people vote to elect us, of course, Mr. President, but they don't vote when we set the tax rate for the commercial and residential tax rates in the fall, as it turns out in December. Generally, that's when we do that. So I just wanted to make that small point. That I hope it's, people are thinking that my vote is anti-democratic. It's not. It's really anti the way this is funded, Mr. President. And when we've heard from other counselors saying that if the commercial tax rate's impacted, I won't vote for it. I don't know if that's going to happen. I know there's counselors who are passionate for Holyoke. It's incredible. But we've heard time and again the amount is not going to go over the 58%. And we've heard it from the top. So, and it's 58% is what we're going to get. Not going to get 59%, certainly not going to get 80%. And we know that I heard one of my just dear friends say earlier who spoke, and she's right, we're getting 80% of the eligible cost. Now that's a true statement, but we're going to get 58% of the actual cost. So my friend that made that comment, she is, as always, spot on. But the real answer is we're getting 58%. And it's not going to go up, no matter how we. Oh, thanks for music. And I want to make that clear. So when we're making this vote, it's not just about the mall. It's about so many small businesses, Mr. President, that are, and I don't want to name them because they didn't ask me to name them, and I don't want to call them out. But there are many small businesses that we all patronize and support, and that have invested and reinvested in the city of Holyoke. And again, we're so grateful. And the new industries that's coming in, we're so grateful for that. They made a business model based upon our tax rate. I'm not sure they made a business model based upon, I heard one of the speakers say it's a 2%. No, this is a 7% increase in the commercial rate. That's the increase. It's not a 2% increase. It's a $2.72 per thousand, but that equates to a 7% increase in the commercial rate. They made a business decision based upon what the tax rate was. Now it's going to change, if this passes, for 30 years. I really wish there was a better way. I know that the state Senate tried to do something, but what we heard from the school building authority chairman, that in the House, which is a very conservative House, it went to study committee, which basically means that it went to die. That bill is not going to come out of the House. There's no additional funding for this. So it's really an impactful question. It sounds to me like it's going to go on the ballot tonight. I don't think there's. I mean, the way I'm hearing the room tonight, I think if it votes as we amended, it sounds like it's going to go on the November ballot. I will be interested to hear what comes out of Finance Committee, Mr. President, as to the how much we're bonding for. But we're again bonding for the whole amount clearly, and we're only going to get reimbursed for 58%. So. With that, I want to thank the President for keeping good order. I think for the most part, it was not an easy meeting to run. Thank the public again for speaking. Thank to all the counselors for sharing their voices. I took notes of all your comments tonight, and I really appreciate them. So with that, I hope we move the question. Thank you.
So currently, what we're standing as is that we have a motion to reconsider. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Well, the ayes would have it, there's no noes. So now there is a motion. Councilor McGivern, you had a motion?
An amendment to change the September date back to the November.
So the motion is that we change September 24th, 2019 to November 5th, 2019. Reminder that the middle school language has not changed. It's still on there. So with regards to the amendment to November 5th, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Ayes would have it. In order to make it valid, I'll ask for a show of hands for the amendment to November 5th. All those in favor? November 5th.
10.
All right.
Dan put his hand back down. Did you have
I
your
know, I
hand
know
up?
why. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's only going to count me once, right?
Yeah.
I just saw him go by me, so I just put it
Okay,
down.
10.
So that did pass. My ears are good. With that, is there any further question? I saw a hand. Councilor Bacon.
Since we're under discussion on a new American.
Your mic.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple more comments, because the statement has been made that the MSBA has never funded 2 schools at once. Like, this is a totally extraordinary thing, but somebody did share a chart with me, and in both Amherst and Lynn, the proposals that were put on the ballot were to do 2 schools. Both of those ballot questions failed, I think, because it was too much. It was too big, too much. In Lynn, a $189 million project. And so now they have reapplied to do 1 school. And I also want to echo a comment that was made earlier tonight of the huge amount of respect that I have for Councilor Murphy. He has done more work in his term on this council, I think, than I've seen anybody do in the same amount of time. I just want to give him a lot of credit, because he could have come in and just sort of, floated through and kept the seat warm. But I give him a lot of credit for that, and I just wanted to thank you for that. So I'm not going to belabor this, but to say that this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing and nothing else can ever happen, and that there is not more than one solution to a problem, is great fiction. Thank you.
There's no further discussion. The clerk will call the roll once again for the public at home as well as here. This is for November 5th, 2019. It's the ballot question that was reviewed in committee. Clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the ballot question for November 5th, 2019.
Could I just make one more comment?
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to vote to put it on the ballot, but I'm going to be very cautious of what the bond total is, and I really would have a difficult time voting for that $131 or $132 million as a debt exclusion. So I'm hoping that the mayor can find a way to plan a bond that does come out of city taxes 3 years down the road, and plan that we use some of the money coming in so that, in fact, I could vote for the bond. Thank you.
Councilor Valentine.
Just a reminder for folks in the public and at home also that because all we're doing at this point is voting to put this on the ballot so that people have the choice to make, not in September, but now in November, is that I urge you all, yes or no, in favor or not, that you now use this time to make sure that you get your message across about how people should vote and why. We've done this for the casino, we've done this for needle exchange, we've done this for reducing the city council from 15 to 13. So obviously this is not the first time, but just a reminder that now at this point, both votes and people in favor and people against, this is your time to organize and make sure that your message is put out there in preparation for this. So just wanted to remind folks about the timeline. Thank you.
Councilor Lisi, then Councilor Bacon.
Just one more thing about the process and timeline. Before you say no, I would urge people to hear what the numbers are. Because right now we're passing the ballot vote, then we have the bond language and the bond amount to deal with. So I think we should hold off on, for or against until we know what the actual numbers are. Thank you.
Counselor Bacon.
Mr. President, thank you. And this is just a point of information. During the CPA debate, our senior center was used for multiple meetings by people pushing that tax proposal and pitching the project to the voters. Equal time was not provided for people who had a different opinion to share information. I've already received one call in this process that somebody seeking to provide information at the senior center was blocked. If there is not going to be equal time given relative to information being shared on this matter in a public building, then no one should be given time to do a political pitch in a public building. This is a critical, open meeting, legal issue, and I'm not gonna watch it happen again like it happened last time. By the time the senior center got opened up to the public to have 2 tables, there was about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago left in the whole process. It needs to be fair, it needs to be open, and it needs to be transparent. Thank you.
On the motion.
So, no further comment. The clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the ballot question for November 5th, 2019.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon,
No.
Valentine,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
No.
Bresnahan,
No.
Leahy,
Yes.
10 yeas, 3 nays.
With your vote, you approve the ballot question for November 5th, 2019. We'll now go back to communications, item number 1.
Motion to take item 13I, the Buddha
What?
Brothers.
Second.
So hold on, we still have business here, so if we can keep our voices down. So the motion is to go back to the application for
I can see him
13,
sitting here all night.
13I.
13I. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? This is an application from Buddha Brothers. Committee on Ordinances referred a special permit application, and it just says awaiting disposition, so I will turn over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. So on May 20th, we opened and closed a Oh, yes, a motion to pass the first.
Second.
Oh, no, a
Motion.
motion to approve the special permit.
Motion
Second.
is motion is to approve the
I gotta
special
get back in
permit.
ordinance mode.
Under discussion, Counselor.
So on May 20th, we opened and closed a public hearing relative to this application, which was for an MME and an RMRE at 604 Main Street. On that particular parcel, there are a number of traffic issues. It's a very busy area with a lot of access concerns. So the committee did a lot of work, and I have to give big compliments to our engineer, Bob Parent, who went out with 2 members of our committee, Councilor Murphy and Councilor Bartley, to take a look at the site and come up with some recommendations. But given the time frame, it was not adequate to come to a full resolution. So what we have done is made it one of the conditions for the special permit. And I will read a summary of the conditions without reading every exact word, but the applicant is aware, and as the council is aware, that we have been using standardized conditions except for the unique aspects of the certain location. So I will quickly read through those. There are 11 conditions on the special permit. 1 is that the owner of the building will always pay the commercial tax rate as allowed by law. 2 is that they will retain a minimum of 30% Holyoke residents for non-security jobs. 3, that the hiring preference given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or are a retired member of another police department and now live in Holyoke. 4, that no marijuana consumption is allowed on site. 5, there shall be no deliveries of retail, recreational, or medical marijuana from the site to individual homes, residences, or people. 6, applicants shall provide traffic patrol should customer traffic impede the flow of regular traffic as recommended by the HPD. 7, per letter from city engineer dated April 18th, 2019, that existing degraded sidewalks be replaced. Item 8, other conditions as noted in the letter of the city engineer dated April 18th, 2019, which the applicant has in their possession. Particularly item 3 regarding traffic and parking mitigation. Item 9, the applicant will make the primary entrance at 606 Main Street and exit at 604 Main Street with a right turn only. 10, the hours of business will be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days per week. Item 11, added tonight, is on an attached sheet, and it basically talks in more detail to maximize the available parking for the facility. The applicant shall expand the parking lot to serve the proposed MME RMRE facility to the limits of the available Main Street frontage, subject to the property line setbacks specified in the zoning ordinance. In addition, the applicant shall modify the existing curb cuts to create one dedicated channelized entrance and one dedicated channelized exit from the facility to discourage vehicles leaving the facility from crossing the center median and blocking Main Street traffic heading towards I-391. Signage shall be provided on site to indicate that only right turns will be allowed, and the applicant shall provide handouts on site with suggested vehicle routes to their customers, as well as on their website and other forms of electronic media. Prior to being granted a building permit, the applicant shall receive the approval of the city engineer and planning department of their proposed parking lot and driveway layout. The applicant is aware of this, they've heard this language, and have accepted it as the added stipulation tonight in the ordinance committee meeting.
Anything else, Councilor?
No, thank you.
Yeah, again, I want to thank the committee for taking the time, and I especially want to thank Councilor Bartley, because I know he had some concerns, and he was taking the time to meet with the city engineer down at the site. I also want to certainly recommend that we adopt the permit, and the gentlemen from Buddha Brothers have been very attentive to the comments and concerns. The previous meeting, and I called the city engineer that night, and he met with me the next morning, and they also met with me the next morning to go over these concerns. I think we've got a situation where traffic flow is going to be safe. We're going to have signage to make sure people can get back on to 391 without trying to cross over Main Street. And I do think, based on all my contact with them, that they are going to be an asset as businessmen in the city of Holyoke, and I thank them for their investment.
Anyone further? Councilor Bartley.
I'd like to speak in favor of this, Mr. President, and thank the committee chair and member of the committee. That, you know, we, as per usual, put a lot of work into this, and of course thank the proponents for their investment in Holyoke, their certainly their demeanor and their excitement about being in this area. It seems like it's a real family. Well, it's a real family affair, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Sorry, I couldn't think of something better than that. Just in the 2 seconds I have. But yeah, it's something that I think that with the standard conditions we put on, they're all kind of ingrained in our ears now. Those of us that sit in this room on a regular basis. In this case, we had to add a couple extra ones, but that was really we felt for public safety. So with the guidance of our city engineer, those are laypersons that were just happened to put a little extra time in. I got a real education from the city engineer. It was very helpful to me, and with that and his recommendations, I know he'll work hand in glove with these proponents. I think we're going to have another great win for an area of Holyoke that needs more wins. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy, then Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, thank you. I too will speaking in favor of this as well. These gentlemen started off a long time ago with this process, and they were on the phone with me and making sure any of my questions that I had were asked and answered. They did their due diligence in talking to the different department heads. They said they're very good people. And I also think they have a pretty cool name. That's not the reason I'm voting for it, but that doesn't hurt. Thank you very much.
Counselor Tallman?
Yeah, I just want to thank the work of the Chair Vacan on the committee, the Ordinance Committee, and Mr. Parent for making this issue very clear, and for the safety and for the investment of the proponents in this area of the city that is really important for our community, and Mr. Councilor Murphy for the work you've done with Councilor Bartley about really looking at the safety issues of the community in that area, of people getting in and out of that area. It really helps this, and thank you for the investment in our community.
Anyone further? There's no further discussion. The clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the special permit with 11. It was 11 conditions?
Yes.
Say, 'cause I don't have them. Okay, 11 conditions, as they were read into the record.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Valentine,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
Bresnahan,
Yes.
Leahy.
Yes.
Unanimous vote of the body.
With your vote, you approve the special permit.
Mr. President?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck to you. All the best.
Thank you.
Should we give him a round of applause?
Was proud.
Yeah.
Hello.
Democracy.
All right, Gladys.
So, Counselor Bartley, and I think someone else over here was.
Well,
a-
I think Councilor,
Same.
we just have two proponents for two different DGR committee meetings, agenda items on here. So I'd like to take up 17B, suspend the rules. And
Second.
after we do that, I'd like to take up 17C. So if the
Second.
committee
B
committee will
first.
allow.
Okay.
So let's take them separately, Mr. President.
So motion to suspend the rules, take up 17B. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Committee on DGNR was referred a special permit for Mount Tom LLC, a new special permit for construction at 200 Northampton Street. Recommended that the special permit be approved.
Yeah, motion is to receive and adopt the committee report and to grant the special permit.
Motion to
Second.
receive, adopt, and grant the special permit. Under discussion, Counselor Bartley.
Right, this is our favorite topic. This is, I think, the fourth time they've been into the committee. And so we had them last night. I want to thank the committee for being here. I did hear from Councilor Valentine. She wasn't able to attend. I forgot to know, but I did thank her. So I did, so, for that. So, for her notice. So Ty and Bond, two of their professionals were here, as well as a representative of NG, which is the corporate umbrella for the LLC that owns the property. Mr. President, what they're doing is, this is a part of a multi-step process for them to finally decommission the whole area. This is 143 acres in Smith's Ferry. As we know, it's a former coal plant. We hear about that, how we lost tax revenue, but Mr. President, in reading this report, we may have lost tax revenue, there's no question about it, but what we're gaining in a cleaner 143 acres, when we're talking about ash waste, asbestos, sludge, former dump for the city of Holyoke, I mean, there's just a lot of pretty mean stuff that was buried there. Slipped down to the river, probably one of the main reasons why the Connecticut River was so in such trouble for many generations, but now it's cleaning up. I think one of the big takeaways from this is, I think everybody asked about the smokestack. I know I'm going to get the date wrong, but the smokestack, I think, is due to be demoed
July 22nd?
July 26th?
Second? Mid-July.
Okay,
15th.
at some point mid-July, that's the, and then the plant itself is when?
The plant itself, I don't think we have
Okay, well, at any rate, so there was just a lot of, in reading this, it's meant for the layperson, obviously, and I appreciate that, but it's still, the point was, the points in here were pretty stark and graphic, and so we don't know what it is that the proponent's going to do with the property. We did ask the question, Mr. President. The only response that we received that the property is being marketed. I didn't ask by whom. I didn't think it was our place, and that's not the question before us. But it's 143 acres of pretty important property. And the final piece is that this process, there's going to be a lot of notices to the neighbors, because when that smokestack comes down, when other things happen, there's going to be some pretty significant sounds. I don't know how else to describe it. It'll be loud, I guess. And so there'll be a lot of notice to the abutters. And but other than the sound, there should be no other impact on the demo to the abutters. And with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Anyone else? There's no further discussion. The clerk will call a roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the new special permit.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Valentine,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
Bresnahan,
Yes.
Leahy.
Yes.
Unanimous vote of the body.
With your vote, you approve the special permit. 17C, motion is to suspend rules, take out of order. That's what
Second.
the order was?
Second.
That's a motion, yep.
All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This is from DGNR, who was referred a special permit application from Colvest for 1575 Northampton Street. Have considered the same, recommend that special permit be approved with the following conditions: that the bank, or it's scratch out, that
A banking.
a banking
A banking
institution
institution.
be housed in the front building, that all requirements of Mass DOT and Hoyoke DPW be fully
Motion is to
satisfied.
receive, adopt the committee report, grant a special permit as amended.
Second.
Motion is to receive, adopt as amended, granted as amended. Under discussion, Council Bartley.
Yeah, again, Mr. President, we had a really good meeting last night. I want to thank the committee members and the public hearing. Both these are public hearings. I should have mentioned that for Mount Tom as well. This public hearing, we had a pretty nice turnout, and some really important points were raised by the public. It was a very thorough discussion. I have to thank the committee. I may not have voted to approve it, but in our discussion, it was helpful to me to hear what they said. This is just to step back for a second. This is, of course, the former Lynch School, and as we recall, that property was sold or transferred, I say, by the school department to the city side of the government. It was marketed for on and off for 10 years. Finally, and a few RFPs, a few other things happened. At one point, we were going to rent it out to a school, to lease it out. We realized in this body that decision by the mayor was a financial disaster, so we rejected that offer, put it out to RFP again, and then we finally got Colvest to come in, and that was the highest and best use. So Colvest has come before us several times for that process. Now they have to come back again for a special permit for a drive-through, Mr. President, and that's why they're here. So they provided schematics, they provided some drawings, they showed the layout. There are a couple additional steps, Mr. President, and that's why we conditioned it. One was to hear from Mass DOT. Mass DOT's impact is going to be relative to Northampton Street, is what we all call it, but Route 5 for those who don't know the name of the street. There's going to be some pretty interesting comments, I would imagine, from Mass DOT. And then, of course, our DPW has to weigh in on what should happen on East Hampton Road, which is a ramp coming from 91 and also from Lindor Heights and the Log Cabin area. And so those are pretty heavily trafficked, and we've got to weigh in. But the interesting part is, right now for the bank, the traffic counts they felt were pretty reasonable, and then I don't think we're not going to have another traffic study, or at this point I don't think we're going to have another traffic study for the second building. So the front building's a bank. We condition it to be a bank, 7,000 square feet. The back building, the one that will abut Anniversary Field, we asked some pretty hard questions, and the proponent was right there on spot, had his whole team with us, and answered all of our questions to our satisfaction. The back building, just to finish, Mr. President, is 17,000 square feet. It's going to be retail. But they weren't in a position to disclose a tenant for either the front building or the back building. That's why we felt the front building, if they're going to have a drive-through, we want to make sure it's not going to be yeah, whatever. That's why we conditioned it on a bank. And the proponent was okay with that, because I think that's been their business model for other locations. And with that, Mr. President, I'll stop. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Oh,
Clerk
my
will
bad.
call a roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the special permit with the conditions.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes?
McGivern.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tolman,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Valentine,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley.
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy.
Yes.
Unanimous vote of the body.
For your vote, you approve the special permit. Back to item 1, from the mayor, a letter, proposal for 405 Main Street. Motion to receive.
What's the
Where does it need to go?
DGR?
what's the proposal?
It's a proposal for 405 Main Street.
What is it?
For what?
In the way of restaurants.
So,
What are we
we're gonna
proposing?
copy, it's a communication. So it would go to DGNR. It's procurement process through purchasing department. Proposal to purchase and develop 405 Main Street. After careful review and recommendation by the review committee, I'm pleased to express my support for proposal for Nueva Esperanza.
So
Just
DG.
a
No, DG, okay,
communication, so
DGR, please.
DGNR.
Oh, now I know. Yeah, DGR, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 2 is from the auditor. It's the updated budget for fiscal 2020.
Motion to receive.
Everyone has a copy, I do believe, on your desk. Motion is to
Receive.
receive it. All those in favor?
Aye.
President.
Counselor
Yeah.
Murphy.
I guess my first question would be, with all due respect to our auditor, who does a tremendous job, is this a legal document?
Yeah, because it was filed through the clerk, it would be an update to, one, as she mentioned in the meetings, was there were corrections on either a number or a typo with regards to the police department, and then there's a position that was forgotten,
So,
of which they have sent in amendments last year and years prior.
so just to make sure I'm understanding, so the mayor submitted his budget to us May 15th or 14th, whatever it was. This now supersedes that?
This is making the corrections that were missed in the review before they submitted it.
Okay, I have reservations on that, but okay, thanks.
Counselor McGivern, then Counselor Bacon.
Just to add on to Councilor Murphy's comments, if this is, because of clerical errors, which my understanding, the way it was discussed last week at the budget hearing, that this is mostly because of clerical errors. We've had this in the past where the correct presentation has been put in to replace the clerical errors. But if there's any changes within the budget or any changes within the cherry sheet is a moving target, I think the only question we have is, does the 45-day period start today, or has the 45-day period already started?
From what we were told, they were clerical errors and made corrections. Now, if they're making add-ons, then you would be right in your saying that.
So I think we can do this in less than a 45-day period from today, because we've already started our hearings, but I reserve the right to question that if we need more time.
Absolutely. Counselor Bacon, then Counselor Bartley.
I'm all set, thanks.
Counselor Bartley.
Right, so that's what we discussed beforehand, before the meeting. So I'm going to reserve my right to see whether or not we have to complete this by June 30th. Because I heard you say they added a new position. Did I hear you correctly, Mr. President?
That was one of the comments by the auditor at the railing, that a position was forgotten in a department.
Okay.
So that's why we told her that mistakes have been brought up to us to fix a number, but with regards to new positions, that would be outside our scope.
Well.
So is it in here?
No, go ahead.
I don't know. We're going to have the auditor come back in to update us on all the changes that she was talking about at the railing.
Well, I appreciate that, but, the law is the law. I mean, so it's 45 days. So, I know I mean, that's state law, so I'm kind of thinking that we maybe, should we get something kind of from the law department? I'm not saying tonight, because I think that's a little bit unreasonable, but would it be, I don't know if this will the body to hear from the law department with a communication maybe between now and our next June 18th meeting to get understanding about, essentially what you said is we have a revised budget that's coming in on June 4th, so clearly not within the 45 days. So I think we should hear from the law department, excuse me, Mr. President, the law department on what our options are. Thank you.
Counselor Bacon.
So now I do have a question because I didn't realize, I thought it was mathematical corrections. I didn't realize there was a new position in this update.
I'm not absolutely sure if it is in there.
Oh.
I just remember the discussions we had prior to the first budget meeting. That was brought up, and I said you cannot do it on the floor at our first budget meeting. So they filed a new document. Once again, we're trying to have the auditor come in to explain what changes are in this new version. And if it does have a new position, then we will have to go to legal and get that answer. From my understanding, a lot of the things that she brought up, once again, at the beginning of the budget hearing were clerical errors.
So then I'd like to reconsider our vote, and I think we should table this updated budget until we know if it has changed the expenses in the budget, because.
Okay, so the motion is to table item 2. All those in favor?
Question.
Before we go, Councilor McGinnis has a question.
I voted, I'm sorry. I speak against I'm sorry. I speak against reconsidering our vote for the purpose of tabling because it to me, the budget process has been in place. We do have a legitimate argument if we need it to take up the full 45 days. Unfortunately, 45 days from now goes towards the end of July. That would be a disaster to the city if we don't have a budget completed and ready by July 1st or shortly after, which has been done once in the past. I say this because I think we can get the answers. The auditor did present a number of changes to us last week at the budget hearing for the 6-8 of us that were there. And during that time, she explained a lot of this, but there are still questions as have been brought out about positions that they're trying to create and about a new recap sheet, which is not the budget, but certainly the revenue source for where it comes from. So I think to continue, we have a hearing this Thursday, we can get answers to our questions, but we can continue asking our questions to the department heads and try to finish this in a timely manner.
Councilor Leahy.
I was going to ask something similar, so asked and answered.
Anyone further?
So
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. My only concern is if we've received it as an updated budget and it changed the expenses in the budget, have we procedurally done that correctly? Because we don't even know what's in it. That's my concern. I'm not sure how to best procedurally.
Councilor McGivern.
Hey, you can answer that question too. The mayor has the right to issue a supplemental budget anytime during this 45-day process to be voted upon prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. Once the budget is adopted or failed to adopt and the 45 days are up, the budget becomes law. But supplemental budgets can and have been presented in the past. I'm not saying this is a supplemental budget, but it could be if there are things that are in addition to what was already presented.
Correct. Anyone further?
Well,
Councilor Bartley.
Well, I'd like to get I will make a motion. I think we have to get a legal opinion, because, I mean, we can't be making, I'm not saying we're making it up, but, I mean, we're going on the fly here, so whether this is a supplemental budget or, which, first of all, I want to know if that's accurate, so I'd like that in writing, for one. I mean, respectfully. So I want to know if the mayor can make a supplemental budget, because I have no experience with that. So I need to know whether or not that's legal within the 45-day period. If a mayor can present a budget May 15th, and between May 15th and June 30th have a supplemental budget? Okay, I guess I want that in writing somewhere. So I need that.
I'll second that motion.
I need that, and then I want in writing as to what the legal status, what's the legal status of this June 4th document with if those changes that you indicated were implemented. So I think we need a legal opinion on Those are just my two humble points.
So
Second.
motion is that the legal department provide prior to June 18th. That date was thrown out. What are we looking for a time frame?
Within reasonable, but no later than.
Right.
All right. Prior to June 18th, motion that prior to June 18th, opinion with regards to supplemental budgets being added to the regular budget, as well as what legal authority.
That's right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So with that, motion is to, we're back to, was it receive with those legals? So all those in favor? All those opposed? On to item 3.
My son's there now.
Motion receive?
Second.
This is the minutes of the meeting for May 21st.
Motion
is to
receive.
receive. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Echo in the room.
4 is from the assessor, of which it's the recertification.
Motion receive.
Motion is to receive. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes, thanks.
5 is a memorandum between the City of Hoyoke and the
Make a mo-
deputy fire.
Motion
Receive,
receive,
send to
send to
finance.
Motion is receive, refer to finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 6 is a memorandum agreement between the chief of wires and the national service officers.
See you for
Motion-
Committee on Finance.
Motion is receive, refer to finance. All those in
Point of
favor?
information.
Counselor Bacon.
So we're receiving this agreement, but we don't have that position in the city, do we?
It was, yeah, that's the new position that's in the building department, I think.
Do we,
It's a
Was
new
it created?
I'm sorry?
Looks like it's in the new budget.
Right, but I don't think we have the position
We don't have it yet.
in the city. I know, I see that.
Find out at
but-
committee.
All right, so that went to finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 7 is from Jesus Prayer. He's the Director of Veteran Services, submitting a disclosure of municipal employees.
Steve?
Motion is receive.
Send to finance.
Needs a vote.
That we have it.
Disclosure.
All right, so motion is suspend the rules, allow legal departments to speak. All those in
Second.
favor, all opposed?
So these people reached out to the Ethics Commission. They were asked to submit disclosure statements. They're taking part in the Veterans Services Tax Write-Off Program, but they also work for the city. So they filled out their disclosures. City Council has to vote because it's personal services.
So it's to receive these?
It's to
Motion,
receive them and vote to allow them to utilize the program.
kind of like the,
Tax write-up, like senior.
is that like the special municipal
Employee.
employee? Kind of like if someone's being a football coach and they're somewhere.
So it's just like our Veterans Tax Write-Off Program, or I'm sorry, our Senior Tax Write-Off Program. There's also one for Veteran Services. So the state ethics law speaks specifically to the Senior Write-Off Program, so we had them ask about the Veterans one, and sure enough, they are one and the same, basically. As long as they fill out the disclosure statement, it states that they don't run the program, they have no interest in the program other than they would like to utilize it. It's the same situation. They can work for the city and they get an abatement on their taxes. So they have to submit disclosure statements. City Council has to sign off on the ability for them to do that.
Counselor Bacon.
But they can't do the work off during their work hours within the city. They have to do it outside of
Outside.
those regular hours, right? That we
Correct.
passed in ordinance?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
that's just, right. They have to work their normal business hours, and then this would be after hours.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Crystal,
Counselor Breslin.
who signs off on the work hours? Who oversees that?
Whoever's getting the actual worker would oversee them.
I mean, I have some questions about this program. I would like to send it to committee. I mean, I'd like to know how many applicants applied for it. Why are we giving it to 2 folks that work for the city of Hoyoke when there might be 2 people that don't work for the city of Hoyoke that might not have jobs? That might be
There's-
able.
Sorry.
Again, I would like to hear, I would prefer Colin and Jesus and get it from his mouth. If nobody else wants to, that's fine, but I take issue with this.
We
I
can
mean,
make
you
a
know,
motion
people-
to send it to public service,
Hold on,
right?
hold on.
Can I just answer some of the questions? So these are the only ones that are actually employees of the city. So many applicants applied and are getting placed, but because they're employees, they have to submit disclosure statements. Nobody else would have to
I
submit
understand.
that.
How many applicants applied?
So that would be a Jesus question, but you don't have
I
to
want it to go
vote
to
on any
committee.
of those. They're all placed.
I know,
These are
but
the only ones
I-
you have to vote on.
I understand that, but I just think that if it just doesn't pass the smell test, when two gentlemen are appointed directly by the mayor, and we don't need to get into the minutia of it now, but when two folks are being appointed directly by the mayor, I'd like to know if there's anyone not directly appointed by the mayor that was not able to take advantage of this $1,000 tax write-off. I mean, I think that seems a fair enough question. If you can answer that, I'm all ears.
Counselor Bartley.
Yeah, I guess in essence, I don't have all things being equal, I don't have a problem with two veterans coming in and looking, even though they work for the city and working for the Veterans Department, if all things are being equal. But I think, well, I know we've heard it here already. I asked the mayor, and, he scoffed at me right here, do you check timesheets? Do you have any controls whether when employees come and go? Flat out, no. So I think what the counselor is asking, or what I'm going to be asking, because of that statement from the mayor, there are no controls here relative to employee time, none. So basic timesheets, that's about as simple as it gets in public employment. We don't do timesheets for whatever reason. I know that HPD, HFD, DPW, they punch a clock, but when you come to City Hall, it's free time. Now, you're all professionals. I'm not disparaging any professional. I'm just saying that's the way the mayor runs his shop. Based upon that comment, I'd like to hear a little bit more as to what kind of controls are going to be in place for employees. I mean, I know, for example, the leadership in the building commission, Fridays, good luck getting them. They're not in. The director and the assistant director are not in on Fridays. They do not work in the office. Now, they're out of the office, but good luck getting them on a Friday. They're not there. Now, it's fine. If that's what the controls are by their boss, who trusted it, they're out doing work, doing inspections, do what they do. I have no reason to doubt that. But now we're going to an extra step. You're going to get another benefit. I think you have to go over a couple of hurdles. It'd be the same way as us, Mr. President. We have to go over hurdles because we're elected officials. I think public employees have to take an extra step. So I'd be in favor of at least getting some of these basic questions answered.
So is there a motion?
Motion to refer to public service.
Second.
To where?
Public service.
The motion was to send to public service. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This is, we're on to petitions. 8 is a renewal.
Motion to
for a yoga
suspend.
8, 9, and 10?
9,
And 10?
and 10
Motion to
as a
suspend
package.
rules, take up 8, 9, and 10 as a package. All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Motion is
opposed?
to pass them so long as all their other charges are good to go.
So 8 is 123 Homestead Ave. 9 is 448 Appleton Street. 10 is also Appleton Street. And all taxes are current. So the motion is to grant the renewals for all 3. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
We don't vote on this?
For renewals? Want to take a roll call?
I thought we did.
All right, motion is, so we'll take a roll call. Clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the renewals.
LeBron Martinez. C.
Yes.
McGee.
Yep.
McGivern.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Tallman.
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Valentine.
Yes.
Anderson Burgos.
Yes.
Bartley.
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy. Unanimous vote of the body.
For your vote, you approved all 3. 11 is a petition for poles and wire locations for the gas and electric department.
Public hearing?
Motion is to set the public hearing. All those in favor? All
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
That's for, looks like Walnut Street. 12 is a special permit for 110 Winter Street.
Ordinance?
Ordinance?
Motion to send to ordinance. All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? President's report, I'll be quick because it's late. June 6th is our next budget hearing at 6 p.m. here. You should have received a copy of the list of the other departments. Also, if you're tired and need sugar, there are cupcakes in back.
Coke.
Not too many left.
They're delicious.
Not too many left, okay. Whatever's left, it's a mad dash.
Celebrated you
Counselor
already.
Counselor Bartley spent a lot of time back there. I'd like to know how many cupcakes were.
Lisi, we should have put the limit, but
They're whittling away.
Counselor Lisi.
Sorry. You said June 5th or
Oh,
June 6th?
6th. June 6th, that's 6 PM.
So is our Public Service Committee on June 5th then? I thought that the letters that went out said June 5th. Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow's June 5th. yeah.
Public
Tomorrow
service.
Tomorrow is
June 5th.
Public Service?
Yeah.
And then
Thursday is budget.
Thursday is
Thursday
budget.
budget, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I had it wrong on my calendar.
Okay, Counselor Bartley.
I really want to thank Councilor McGivern for doing a great job at the Memorial Day service. His remarks, I think, were really important. And then, of course, when we had the musical accompaniment of the Bethlehem Baptist Church Choir, which was, and then the Caledonian Pipe Band as well. So we were just really entertained. And of course, Mr. Sims and Ms. Pereira and then everybody that, participated. I thought it was a really excellent turnout by the public and officials, and thank everybody for participating.
So we're on to Ordinance Committee.
Okay, Mr. President, can we suspend necessary rules and take up 13A, B, and C as a package?
Motion to suspend rules, take up A, B, and C as a package. All those in
And
favor?
aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And
No, just aye. Yes.
Oh, okay. So,
Sorry. So the motion is to pass the first reading.
all right, so 13A is, command ordinance that a no parking here to corner sign be placed 20 feet on the side of Isabella Street and Foyer Street, as well as, potential risk danger. So that is being adopted. 13B is 17 Beacon Ave, which is a no parking sign for limited time purposes. Recommend that be adopted. 30. Oh, that goes with that. And 13C is do not block the box, Southampton Road, East Hampton Road. Recommend that be approved. This motion is receive, adopt, pass the first reading. Our discussion, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. So Bob Parent has been very good to the committee, and he gives us a very detailed written response to the various orders that are filed by various counselors. And in these 3 cases, he found that the requests were warranted, and they've been put into legal form for the council to pass. They're pretty straightforward. If the makers wish to speak to them, they can, but they're nothing dramatic. Thank you.
Anyone further? Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, I just want to speak in favor of that 13C about that area in Southampton Road, East Hampton Road. I know that's been a problem for a number of years, people just trying to get out of there. So I think that's great that they're going to try to do the don't block the box there in that area.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you. As the maker of the order, I got a lot of, I had a neighborhood meeting up there, at Deer Run, and a lot of the people up there had a lot of concerns about this. And this is going to save time on both sides. Thank you.
No further. Motion is to pass the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to pass the second reading?
Motion is to pass the second reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Motion that the passages be ordained.
Motion that the passage be ordained. Clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for all 3.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Valentine,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
President Leahy. Unanimous vote of the body.
You approved all 3. 13D.
Mr. President, under suspension of rules, can we take up 13D, 13G, and 13H as a package?
Second.
13D, G, and H as a package. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 13D is no parking sign at 970 Hamden Street. 13G, that the city install a crosswalk across Northampton Street and Washington Ave. 13H is no parking sign be placed near the driveway with an arrow towards the driveway at 16 Dale Street. All of them been complied with.
So the motion is to receive and adopt the committee report?
Motion is to receive, adopt, under discussion.
So in these 3 cases, our engineer went out and reviewed the areas, and his feedback was that under current law, for the orders that related to things near gates and driveways, there's existing law that says there has to be 5 feet on either side of the edge of the driveway. And so he said it's really an enforcement issue because they can't really go and deal with individuals on an individual basis in this regard, but that they really do have to call the police department and follow up. I recognize, I think there were 3 relative similar things from 3 different wards, and the people get very frustrated when they have difficulty accessing their property or egressing from it, but DPW said they don't really have the resources to do something in excess of the law on the books right now, so that was his response.
All right, so the motion is that they have been complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Brings us to 13E.
Under suspension of rules, can we take up 13E and 13F as a package?
Motion is to pick up 13E and F as a package. All those in favor? All opposed? E is that ordinance was referred that no parking be allowed at 1470 Dwight Street in front of the gates. And then F is a no turn on red sign be placed at Hillside Ave on both sides of the intersection approaching Cherry Street.
So the motion is to receive and adopt the committee report.
Motion is to receive, adopt the committee report. Under discussion.
And bear with me, I have to find the details on this. I know on the issue of the gates, he said the driveway law applies relative to the 5 feet. The owner of the gate can put a sign on the gate, but DPW can't enforce people blocking the driveway. It's similar to the other orders that had been filed. Relative to Hillside.
No turn on red.
Okay, so the issue with there was that an engineering study is required to determine if the conditions exist that warrant placement for this particular restriction. One of these conditions is more than 3 right turn on red accidents reported in a 12-month period for the particular approach. And the accident data that was provided by the police department confirmed only 1 possible right on red accident at this intersection over the past 5 years, and therefore the DPW has determined that the conditions do not exist that warrant placement of a no turn on red sign there.
Okay. Under discussion, Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, just on 13, I want to thank the committee for taking that up for Action Marine and Water Sports and Councilor Juan Anderson Burgos for co-filing that with me. They were having problems parking, people across the street in the block parking in front of their gates. They got 2 gates. They do have no parking signs, so it was stated by Bob Parent that, if there's a problem, continued problem, to call the police, and they can actually ticket them with the ordinance, the current ordinance, or tow the cars. So, especially this time of year when it's summer, they're moving boats in and out of there, and it's really difficult if there's a car parked right in front of the gate. So I appreciate the committee take it up, and that the owner of Action Marine and Water Sports to contact the police department if there's a continued problem.
Anyone further? So motion is that recommended that be adopted by recommendation of the engineer. That's what it says in the reports for both.
Yes, yes.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
And we've already taken care of 13I.
13I was already done, so.
Oh, and one more thing.
Yep.
One more thing, like we didn't have enough. So I would like to make a motion to take out of committee and copy to DPW and the city engineer a request that the portion of Hadley Mills Road as described below be discontinued and abandoned under section 78-81. of the Holyoke Code of Ordinances. I was advised by Attorney Barnes that this should have properly been sent there in the first place,
Second.
according to our ordinance.
So-
And so we're just getting it in the right place so it can be acted upon more
So the
quickly.
motion is to remove from committee the Hadley Barnes discontinuance of the road.
Correct, and I don't have the agenda reference for
So
it.
move from committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now the
And
motion
the
is
motion is to
to,
send it to DPW and the city engineer.
Second.
Second.
Board of Health?
Board of Public Works.
Oh, Board of Public Works, right.
Board of Public Works.
Not, right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Now that's really it. Thank you.
Finance, Public Safety, Public Service, DGNR, 17A. Command DGNR was referred a special permit application for 2237 Northampton Street. I have considered approval with the following conditions. Hours of operation shall be Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Should a customer car be kept for repair overnight, it must be stored indoors.
To receive, adopt the committee report to grant the special permit as conditioned.
Motion is to receive, adopt, and grant it based on those conditions. Under discussion?
Well, the committee met again on, well, last night, but we also met on May 23rd. And this is one of the, the lucky times, you get to be a city councilor. You would never meet a proponent like this, ever, in regular world. But as a city councilor and the chair of that committee and the committee members, we were given a particular special treat that night because the proponent, Moni Teth, he is a refugee from Cambodia. And he came in dressed in, and he's a Buddhist monk, and he came in dressed in his full robes, and it was so impressive. I know that's an aside, I'll get to the point in a second, but it was, this guy was, it was almost a spiritual type of, because that's what the whole vibe was. And so, I mean, normally I'm a little more curt with when the public speaks. I really time them and then I shut them down. But I couldn't possibly do that, Mr. President, to Mr. Teth. So what Mr. Teth and his partner are doing are taking what's been a eyesore, a visible disaster for at least 11, 12 years. It's in the heart of Kmart Plaza as one turns in at the second entryway, which, the middle one, and it's been a former Midas. And that Midas Corporation, those dirty dogs, they've just been paying the rent. They're paying it for all these years, but leaving it vacant. This is what corporate America does. Just, here you go, Holyoke, just take your vacant building, here's your rotten taxes, we don't care, we're gonna leave the building vacant. Well, Mr. Teth he's a businessman, came from absolutely abject poverty, and he's got not one, not two, but he's got 6 locations in Connecticut and in Rhode Island. This will be his 7th location overall, first one in the Commonwealth. I happen to mention that night because the back of the building has been, paint peeling and all the rest of that for a generation. He and his partner came in, painted it once. Well, they got the wrong material, so the paint peeled off again. I went by it today. Perfect. So I don't know when they're there because I'm over there a lot and never saw a paintbrush or anything, but they just got the job done. So this is just going to be, I hope, was going to be a wonderful business for Ward 3, for the city of Holyoke, for Kmart Plaza. I can't wait for next year's parade when they're out there, because it's just a spectacular business. So I hope the committee will get behind it. With that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Anyone further? If not, clerk will call a roll. If you vote yes, you're voting to grant the special permit.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Murphy, Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Valentine,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos.
Yes.
Bartley.
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
With your vote, you approve the special permit. Those are done. Charter and rules is done. Joint committee, none. On to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Theater readings, please.
What?
abbreviated readings, please.
Motion is to have
Second.
abbreviated readings. Is that seconded?
Yes.
All those in
Second.
favor? All
Aye.
opposed? From Councilor McGee, that the tax collector come in along with the contracted servicers to talk about the excise tax bill and the issues with them in the sense that some were delivered and they're now penalizing people for it.
Where do you want it?
You want to go?
So, to
Finance?
Second.
all those in favor?
Sign me on to
Aye.
that.
Opposed?
Councilor McKee, can you sign me on to that?
Adding Councilor Lisi. 21,
Mr. President, if I could, make a motion to take up several items together for
absolutely.
the purpose of referring to finance. Could be a record here, Daniel.
Yeah.
What do you have, Counselor?
21, 22, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. Receive, refer to Committee on Finance.
And Mr. President, may I add to that item number, where is it, Joe? 41,
And 41.
because that's going to finance too. Okay, Joe? with
Yep, that's
25?
fine, yep.
All right.
All right, so abbreviated readings, motion to suspend the rules. Take up 22, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 41. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. President, make a motion to suspend the rules to take up
Hold
item.
on, just hold on. 20.
I was trying to get you out of reading them.
I'm not, I said abbreviated.
Real abbreviated.
Yeah, real
22 is $27,020.
Oh, he's got 21 as well, Mr.
21,
President.
too.
21, yeah.
So Mr. Mouse,
We're
start
missing
there.
21. Did it get connected? Oh, 21. So 21 is $9,988 for chief official of wires. 22 is from various items, $27,020 to assistant director of library. 5,000 from sanitarian to health services. 27 is $7,923 to senior civil engineer. 28 is $45,032 from motor car equipment repair person to heavy motor equipment operator. 29 is from free cash, $6,940.61 to various areas. 30 is from free cash, $74,109 for floating clerk treasurer, coming from there as well, $14,080. That's a grand total of $88,909 to litigation. Land court taking $13,453.92 and going to short-term debt. That's number 31. 32 is $26,000 from Council on Aging, their health services to property insurance. 33 is free cash, $79,474.57 to health insurance. 41 is from Councilor Bartley, that's the city councilor, consider joining the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District. There is a minimum enrollment cost of $5,000 for surveillance, outreach, and education, and that goes to finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Councilor McGivern, you had another.
If we could take up item 23 and 24 together to adopt this evening.
Motion to
Second.
suspend rules, take up 23 and 24 as a package. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 23 is $1,811.86 from lieutenants to injured on duty. 24 is from firefighters, $5,295.34 to injured on duty. Motion is
Make a motion
receive,
to
adopt,
receive, pass for first
reading.
reading.
Second.
Under discussion, Councilor McGivern.
These are the weekly or biweekly votes on the injured on duty. It's an accounting method to keep track of salaries of any of our public safety employees who are injured on duty. Sometimes it's for as quick as a weekend, sometimes it's more longer. I believe you have the amount that it is for this one.
Yep, so it's one from police and two from fire. Any further discussion? Motion is to pass the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to pass the second reading?
Motion is passed the
Second.
second reading. Clerk will call roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for 23 and 24.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
Lisi,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Tallman.
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Valentine.
Yes.
Anderson Burgos.
Yes.
Bartley.
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy.
Yes.
Unanimous vote of the body.
With your vote, you approve 23 and 24. 26 is next. This is the Community Development Block Grant.
Mr. President, before we make a motion, I just have question marks saying I meant to ask questions answered before this evening, but we have never done this with the block grant in this format. Councilor Bartley's committee now, DGR, formerly the redevelopment committee, has always handled the block grant. They have their own department for the administration of the grant. I don't know if there's a request with this. I don't have a copy of it other than the agenda. And I just do whatever we need to do with it, but I'm just not too sure. It looks like we're trying to put it in a format that most grants would be put in terms of the administration of the grant. I'm not too sure.
It just says from Chief of Police that the Hoyok Police Department has been awarded the 2019 Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $20,000. Please see attached award letter. We're requesting your acceptance as well as the City Council's acceptance of this grant.
Well, we can refer it to Committee on Finance, but that's, if it's part of the block grant, it should be DGR, and it should be, because the difference with the block grant is HUD has, we hire people through the grant itself to administer the grant and to report back to HUD. And
This
you
might
know,
answer your question, Councilor McGivern. From Alicia Zoller, there's a second letter, fiscal year 2019 Community Development Block Grant request. And it talks about the money coming from there for 20,000, so.
Motion to go with the DGR.
Second.
I think that's the best way, because we don't want the normal administration of the grant. We want, Alicia to be in charge and reporting it to HUD and to the city.
All right, so it's to go to DGNR.
Just a quick comment, if I might.
Councilor Murphy?
I'm pretty certain this is what Councilor Bartley brought up at the community development meetings when we talked about the 20,000 and the need to have a lease or a contract that would be approved, if I'm not mistaken. Am I not correct? I got
We'll
you on
talk
that
in
one.
committee.
So to
Okay.
to DGNR, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? On to 34. From Councilor Murphy and Councilor Bacon, order that all department heads submit the city
Oh,
council.
Mr. President, did we do 33? Did we skip that, Joe?
No, we did it.
It's-
No,
Finance.
that went to finance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's in the
Sorry,
package.
Mr. President.
Yeah. Well, no, we did so many, it's good to double
No,
check.
no, my bad.
So it is 34, and this is that all department heads to the city council, capital improvement needs for the next 5 years. These reports should include the project estimated potential costs for each, noting that the scale 1 to 4, and 1 being the most needy. So both should be received and referred to.
Make a motion, we adopt and then refer to department heads, but a copy to finance.
So you want to receive,
Mayor.
adopt, send to finance to all department heads.
Right.
And the mayor.
And the mayor, correct.
All right, so motion is receive, adopt, send this to all department heads and the mayor, copy to finance.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
35 from Councilor Murphy and Bacon, order that the Finance Committee of the City Council meet to discuss the earmarkings, the income derived from the marijuana industry's host agreement, and that tax revenues as follows: 20% deposit to stabilization, 45% deposit in the capital improvements, 35% deposit in the general fund.
Make a motion to receive and refer to finance.
To finance, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 36 from Councilor Murphy, order that the contract with Zip Cars be reviewed to determine why the city is not receiving any revenue from the enterprise and what can be changed to make sure that the city receives appropriate payments for allowing the company special parking privileges downtown.
Can I be added to that too, please?
Adding Councilor Bacon.
Make it a trifecta.
I make a motion, I think, to send it to DGR, but, or finance, and I'm not really sure which one. Or if there's an ordinance governing.
My friendly amendment, I think you should go to ordinance.
Okay.
So motion is to receive and refer to ordinance.
Under discussion.
Under discussion, bless you,
Bless you.
Counselor
Thank you.
Bartley.
We've, just through the chair to word to Counselor, we had this discussion. We had this discussion in 2013 or 2014. So what the counselor is referring to are the two parking spaces over on Maple Street, across from the convenience store that abut the Veterans Park. We had the discussion before. We had Mr. Fuqua in here. We said, you put up the signs without an ordinance. We said to the mayor, you put up the signs without an ordinance. Shrugging the shoulders. So we were just, I mean, we're just talking about those pesky state laws for about the 45-day, and now we're talking about these pesky city ordinances. Those signs are up illegally, put up by the DPW at the behest of Mr. Fuqua and, of course, at the mayor. Because Zipcar came in and said, we want to do business in Holyoke and, give us 2 parking spaces. Okay, do they pay for the city? No, they do not. They take away 2 metered spaces for people that want to come downtown and do business at the Taylor, or they want to visit somebody at one of the residences. So I think it would, the time is ripe. I mean, to do it again. Whether we'll get any movement out of this, I tend to think not, because we didn't get it before under that former city council. But that is the history of it. To my friend, the Ward 2 councilor. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, again, obviously, I read a little bit about the days in 2013, 14, but as I understood it, at one point, what was that over there?
That's in the history book. I don't go much before that.
Conditioner in here.
So, I assumed at first there was an ordinance, and then I heard there probably wasn't. But then I thought, well, we got to be getting paid for this. And at one point, it appears that Zipcars might have been a nonprofit. However, in trying to do some research on it, it appears that they are owned by Avis Car now. And so, a for-profit entity using city property, having 2 vehicles, and making money, and not paying the city after we're talking about trying to figure out how we're going to pay bills, that is absurd. And I mean, I don't know what we can do legally, but I certainly think something needs to be done to challenge it.
Councilor.
I'm free to challenge. I got nothing else to do.
Councilor McGivern.
The other question that was never answered, not just that it's a business, not for profit or profit, occupying city property, it's also occupying parking places, which state law is very clear. We cannot designate parking places to any one entity. The only thing we can designate is handicap, and even that's general for anybody with a handicap placard itself. And we've been told time and time again, we cannot on-street parking designated for anyone.
Remember that last thing we just went
To ordinance?
Yes.
Why not?
Favor? All opposed?
Aye.
30.
Good luck, Terry.
37. Councilor Murphy. Order that the mayor, school receiver, law department work together to provide a legal contractual commitment for the school department to provide the $1 million each year towards the bond payment for the 2 middle schools and the debt exclusion question.
Can I be
Please
added to this too? I'd
Please
love to see
report the
that in writing.
status to the city council by September 17th. Councilor Murphy.
Yes, and again, obviously, when we were having committee hearings about the debt exclusion, one of my 25 questions was regarding the savings that were used, and we got a verbal commitment from Dr. Reich that they could be providing $1 million a year. He did indicate while he was there he would be fine with that, but that he obviously doesn't expect that he's going to be here forever. I then had conversations with the state Commissioner of Education's department, who indicated that if in fact you're going to try to do that, you need to get some kind of legal contract, and he didn't know if that was legal. So what I'm trying to find out, even before any debt exclusion goes on, the people of the city should know whether or not we can, in fact, legally expect a $1 million contribution from the school department. I don't know the answer to that, but that's why I'm asking these. And I think September 17th, because I didn't know September 24th or November 5th, so that's why I put September 17th. But I do think that question needs to be answered without any question and without any doubt. Either we can or we can't, so people know before they vote.
Adding Counselor Bacon.
Thank you. I'd like to see that in writing.
Also, I'll sign on. Anyone else? Counselor Bresnan. So that would be to receive, copy to mayor, receiver, law department, then finance, I'd say. So copy to them and refer it to finance.
And a copy back to us by the September 17th meeting.
Well, it's gonna go to finance, they'll take it up and they'll have to have the copy in by then.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 38 from Counselor Sullivan, that the Honorable City Council approve a grant to one Hoyoke CDC recommended by the CPC in the amount of $32,000 for 43 Canal Street.
I'd like to try to receive and adopt.
Motion from Counselor Sullivan is to receive and adopt. Under discussion, Counselor Sullivan?
Yep, so the CPA committee did its usual great job on this. They had Mr. Moriarty in. This is the old, the former Portuguese American Club in the flats. It's all for facade work, handicapped ramp, and it was approved unanimously by the committee.
Anyone else? Counselor Bartley.
Well, I just through the chair to Councilor Sullivan, because I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to this. That's why I don't know if this should go to committee or not. I support this wholeheartedly, the $32,000, no question about it. I was wondering if that one Holyoke CDC, or if Councilor Sullivan thought it made sense to, it would be nice if we could honor Attorney George Neves, who gave a lot of his time and effort to the former Portuguese American Club, tried to bring that back. I went to so many parties there over the years, just, wholesome things, nothing weird, just Valentine's Day stuff, so just great things that they did. Now, George passed away a few years ago, and which was just a massive blow to the Holyoke Bar and to just to a lot of his clients and, of course, to his family and friends. So I'm wondering if Councilor Sullivan thought that would make sense, if we could condition the grant on something, whether the property itself or something being named in honor of Attorney Neves.
Counselor Sullivan.
We'll get, they come before us quite a bit, and they have other fundings in line for that building also that they'll be requesting in the next cycle. So I'd rather not hold this up if we could help it, so they could get busy and get to work on it this summer. It's certainly, I think that's something that I know the committee, and I know that Holyoke CDC won't have any problem with something like that. I don't think we'd have to make it a term and condition. I think it's a request we could make of them, and they'd be more than happy to go along with it.
So motion is to receive, adopt. I think we've been doing roll calls on these simply because they're financial transfers. So the clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the allocation of $32,000 to 43 Canal Street.
LeBron Martinez. Lisi.
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
McGivern.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Tallman.
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Valentine.
Yes.
Anderson Burgos.
Yes.
Bartley.
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
What's your vote? You're approved 38. 39 is Councilor Valentin, Councilor Murphy, that Chief Pond be invited to the Ordinance Committee to discuss an incentive for 6 families and above residential properties installing or upgrading monitors for fire protection systems in their property.
Motion is sent to ordinance.
Motion is
Second.
receive, refer to ordinance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And this is just for clarification. It's a
Councilor
follow-up to a discussion we already started in ordinance, and this is the wording after consulting with Chief Pond. Thank you.
So that is gone to ordinance. 40
PGR.
is
Second.
Councilor Bartley, order that the Honorable Council, Master in Law 30B, This is 405, 407 Main Street for 1,000. That is to, what'd you say again? I'm sorry.
DGNR, please.
DGNR. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 41 was already done. 42, Councilor Bartley, at DPW install a no left turn and a do not enter sign at the entrance of Kmart Plaza. Motion would be to
Yeah, it's
receive and adopt.
it's received, I prefer. It's just a clearer,
Second.
larger one. That's the one that's there, because that is clearly not being adhered to.
So receive, adopt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And 43 from Council President, that the City Council being given a tour within 30 days of this order to the top floor of City Hall and all rooms, as well as the basement of City Hall for good conditions of said area. Motion is
Second.
receive, adopt, send to DPW, copy to Mayor's office, and where else?
Public safety.
Public safety. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We do have some late files. A is a request of $13,475 from certain areas to then various areas. This would be to finance.
Receive Committee on Finance.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? B is from overtime, 1,300 to two different overtimes for the same amount.
Finance.
To
Second.
finance, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? C is $85,565.35 from various areas to snow removal, overtime, and services. So
Finance.
All those in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? And the last one is D from Councilor Gladys Martinez, or that section 86-321, section I, parking be amended to include the following: Canal Street improved parking from DPW and its customers to ordinance. All those in favor? Up.
Aye.
Up.
It's about parking and
Yeah,
ordinance.
parking be amended. So to ordinance, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And I do believe that's the last one.
To adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed?